All right, let's get a drive time. Thursday afternoon, 7 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. How do you like 72 degrees and sunny here in beautiful downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway media studios? Will be chilly over the weekend. There's an 83% chance of rain on Saturday night at about 8:15, which, is the time where Utah football will kick off against Arizona State. So plan accordingly. Bring the ponchos, bring the jackets, bring the umbrellas. It's going to be a rainy, cold Saturday night here in Salt Lake City. But on a Thursday afternoon, feels like we should be on a golf course. Beautiful outside, sunny and clear. Love these fall October days. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson behind the glass today, producing the program. We've got a really good guest list to talk about the weekend ahead. I know it's only Thursday, but we like to reward you with weekends on this show starting on Thursday. That's what we did in college. I felt like college weekends always started on Thursday and went through at least Monday night, depending on how dialed in you were with your schoolwork. Your boy over here was a disinterested student, to say the least. But anyway, happy Thursday. And you made it to the start of pro football. Week 6 in the NFL starts with a divisional battle tonight. A game that we have on this little old radio station, the Eagles and the Giants, from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Eagles a 7.5-point favorite. Saquon Barkley has not had a 100-yard rushing game yet this year. The Giants are rolling with local boy Jackson Dart under center. And we will bring you coverage of that game when we say goodnight just after 6 o'clock on the program. Big weekend ahead in the NFL. It's been a really fun start to the season in pro football. Unfortunately, a lot of injuries continue to pile up. We still don't know who the starting quarterback will be for the San Francisco 49ers coming up this weekend. Brock Purdy did not practice yesterday. Mac Jones was limited, so nothing official. It's a big game. The Niners are in Tampa to take on the Bucs. Both teams are 4-1. Sunday Night Football, Lions-Chiefs should be a good one. The Lions are now, the favorite to win the Super Bowl is still the Buffalo Bills. The Bills play on Monday night against the Falcons. Bears-Commanders Monday night too, one of those weird Monday night doubleheaders. The Lions are now second in the Vegas odds to win the Super Bowl this year. So get to some NFL storylines on the show today. Major League Baseball postseason yesterday was chaotic and fun, depending on which team you cheer for. As a Yankee fan, I'm tipping my cap. If you're on YouTube, well, I'm wearing my hat on backwards, but I'm tipping my cap to the Toronto Blue Jays. Deserving winners. Those guys are raking right now. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is hitting everything that's in front of him. And a lineup that has been potent all year long, and they advance. Yankees have not won a World Series in 16 years. I think it's the third longest drought for a baseball team that's won a third of the AL pennants all time and a quarter of all World Series historically. It's a different time. A lot of people over the past 24 hours drawing a parallel to the death of George Steinbrenner and the death of the Death Star Yankee feared organization that outspent everybody for a number of years, and that's not the case anymore. Aaron Judge changing the narrative around his postseason performances. A lot of people believing he was just kind of cosplaying as a modern-day A-Rod, a regular season powerhouse, and disappeared in the postseason. He had a really good postseason this year, which is a good sign. Tigers beat the Mariners, which means we have an elimination game in the ALDS. The Cubbies held on to beat the Brewers 4-3. Phillies took care of the Dodgers. That series is 2-1. So we have a couple of potential elimination games today, starting in about 2 hours. It's Phillies-Dodgers from Dodger Stadium. And then the late-night game tonight is Brewers-Cubbies from Wrigley. Milwaukee leads the series 2-1. The Dodgers lead the series 2-1. So Phillies and Cubbies trying to stay alive tonight or today. How about young Ace Bailey, guys, huh? Who watched some Jazz preseason basketball last night? Raise your hand if you watched the Utah Jazz last night. I certainly did. And I feel like last night is probably going to be how this season is actually going to go. You don't learn a ton in the preseason, and a lot of players were held out on both sides, really. But we did see a little Kevin Durant action for Houston. Houston is a good team. They're probably one of the top 4 teams in the West. Some people think higher. The annual GM survey was released today, picking the Oklahoma City Thunder to repeat and Nikola Jokic to win MVP. Cooper Flagg to win Rookie of the Year. But I thought Ace was really good. He started 2 of 6, then made his last 7 shots. He had 25 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. And the young man got into a little back and forth with Kevin Durant. Now, KD sat him down pretty good. I mean, calm down, Ace. You come at the king, you best not miss. KD, a legend, probably the second best player of this generation, if we're honest. Now, it's been weird to watch his career kind of turn into him being a mercenary, right? I think this is his 5th team. A dude that good should not play for 5 teams in his career, but he's now a Houston Rocket, and he and Ace had a fun little back and forth, and he basically told Ace to take a seat. But I'll tell you what, man, there's a lot to like about Ace. There is. Maybe the most exciting piece the Jazz have acquired since deciding to tear down the group 4 years ago with, obviously Mitchell and Gobert and Quinn as the coach. There has not been a lot to be excited about, but last night a few things early on manifested themselves as things that maybe we could dig into and get excited about for the future. So we'll do some NBA on the show today. We'll talk some Jazz. They're off tonight, back in action against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs tomorrow. Eric Spoelstra will take over for Steve Kerr as your new coach of Team USA. Steve Kerr taking over for Greg Popovich, and now Eric Spoelstra taking over for Steve Kerr. So a little bit of NBA news, and I don't know if this is the off-season NBA news cycle trying to stay relevant. Apparently the Knicks tried to trade for Giannis. Okay, sweet. I have no idea what that framework of a deal would look like, but Brian Windhorst in a high school gym, breaking news earlier today, so there's that. Obviously, top of mind is Saturday night as Arizona State will be in Salt Lake City for a massive game against the University of Utah. Kenny Dillingham was filmed spraying Sam Levitt's football with water out of a water bottle. They're preparing for rain. Wet ball drill's not all that rare. And so, as we've talked about all week, we'll continue to talk about today and throughout the course of the rest of the week. This feels a little bit like an elimination game for the Utes. Not entirely, but kind of, right? The line has really remained steady. At one point yesterday, DraftKings moved it up to 6. That's now down to 5.5. Utah opened as a slight favorite. Then most of the money went towards the Utes. It is settled at 5.5. And I have 5 sports books in front of me, and every single sports book favors Utah by 5.5. BYU opened as a 3-point favorite over Arizona as they travel down to Tucson. That line has moved twice towards Arizona, and BYU right now is a 1.5-point favorite as Brigham Young has stayed clean so far and passed all the tests that have been put to them. And the question continues to be how difficult have those tests been. And that is a dynamic that's not exclusive to BYU. We can even include Utah, who so far has beat 4 teams that they should beat and lost to 1 team that looks to be pretty good in Texas Tech. So we'll do some college football. It's a really fun college football slate. There's some good rivalries. We got the Red River rivalry. Say that 10 times fast. Oklahoma and Texas. Texas fighting for their lives. John Mateer, questionable. We have the first ever SEC injury report. It was released today. And Oklahoma's quarterback, who had surgery on his throwing hand like weeks ago, is questionable for the Red River rivalry. Cotton Bowl, Dallas, Texas. Oklahoma, a 1.5-point favorite in that game. Can Indiana and Francisco Mendoza make it interesting up at Autzen against Oregon? Every time I see Dan Lanning interviewed, 2 things come to mind. What an awesome coach, and he is a psychopath. He was doing some hits around media earlier today to preview this game. Michigan, USC, we've got Georgia, Auburn. Man, we've got a lot of good games on the college football slate. And, of course, a lot of big Big 12 action, too, as we, inching closer and closer to halfway through the season. And now we have to move from observation to conclusion. Our first guest today, Kyle Bonagura, one of our favorites who covers college football for ESPN. Also covers soccer. Diego Luna called up once again for the U.S. men's national team. RSL will be without Diego up at Lumen Field on a rainy Saturday night in Seattle, Washington. Dramatic scenes, man. Fall soccer. Very few things in sports more dramatic than that. So RSL is going to have to be on the front foot. Soccer term, kids. Don't get too confused. To go get 3 at Lumen before they finish off the season with an easier task, but on the road against St. Louis. St. Louis not very good this year. So We'll get to some soccer with Kyle. Sam Bruckhouse stops by for his weekly hit from Sumer Sports to talk more football. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune. Maybe live in studio. Andy's very famous. He's a very big deal. He might be pulled in a bunch of different directions. Andy covers the Jazz for the Trib. He's been helping out on some football coverage and potentially could be covering the Mammoth as our friend Bell Frazier has moved back east. Our loss and the gain of the Boston Bruins. Bell was great on the Mammoth beat. Speaking of the Mammoth, goodness gracious, everything is happening. It's all happening, right? For fans of Almost Famous, it's all happening. It's all happening. Mammoth open up their season tonight against the Avalanche. That's right. And then 4 o'clock, we're a little fluid. Might do some more Utes, might do some RSL. Andy might hang out in studio. We'll do Sports Court today, as we are wont to do on Thursdays with Handy and Handy. So a busy Thursday show with Kyle Bonagura, with Sam Bruckhouse, Andy Larson, a couple of potential guests for 4 o'clock hour. Sports Court with our guys over at Handy and Handy. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Man, what a day outside. Good to have you along for the ride. That guy, Porter Larson, Thursday afternoon.
What up, what up, what up?
Of everything that's on the table right now, what intrigues you the most? Is it simply Saturday night at Rice Eccles?
Yeah. And, you know, in addition to that, BYU is a ranked team. It just feels real Big 12-y right now in the market, and that expands, yes, of course, to Salt Lake and the Utes, who I think probably should be ranked. If not, they're right there on the outside. And then, of course, BYU still unbeaten in the Big 12. As you mentioned, you know, how tough have those tests been? Well, we're going to find out. They've got a pretty decent Arizona team, and I'm really excited to learn more about the Big 12 than we have in quite a few weekends past, because there's been some interesting scenarios where we get down into a month and more in the season, and we still don't know a lot about some of these teams, which is kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yep, you're not wrong there. And so it is time to get familiar as the competition now stiffens for most of the teams that have been able to kind of ease their way through a week beginning schedule to the season. All due respect, you beat the teams that are in front of you, and you handle the business that you're supposed to handle, and things will work out. All right, we'll break college football storylines down with Kyle Bonagura right out of the gates. But before we catch up with Kyle on a Thursday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends, too, at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
You guys know by now that Prize Picks is the best way to win cash on the Broncos, on the Niners, on the Chiefs, on the Raiders, any of your favorite football teams this football season. Which players do you think will go off? Which ones do you think are overhyped? All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. So if you want to pick more on Josh Allen's passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. You can also follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Side note, if you follow me and copy my picks and we lose, do not send me direct messages being upset that you lost $5. I'm not telling you to follow me. Okay, do your own thing. But what you should do right out of the gates is download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup, promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. All right, 83% chance of rain Saturday night at around 8 o'clock, 8:15. Why do you need that information? Well, that's right around the time Utah-Arizona State kick off at Rice Eccles Stadium. Don't forget our pregame coverage with that guy, Porter Larson. And friend of the program, Trevor Riley, will begin just after 4 o'clock on Saturday. So make sure to set your alarm and keep your radios dialed in to ESPN 700 or 92.1 FM, whichever you use. You can also use our app, ESPN 700 app. And then kickoff, Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester. Sly's going to have to wear his rain clothes. Bring your umbrella, bring your jackets. Make sure you're dressed for some cold, rainy weather. giving away some ponchos this week at ARUP Blood Services. Hopefully you came by and grabbed one of those because it is going to be cold and it is going to be raining and it is going to be wet, leading to social media posts and videos of Kenny Dillingham spraying Sam Levitt with water bottles. Wet ball drills all around down in Tempe for Arizona State, who comes in as still one of the Vegas favorites to win the conference. Now, the Vegas favorite right now is Texas Tech, but when you look at the line, Arizona State still has a puncher's chance. So does Utah. So does BYU. A lot of people on the Cincinnati train now. A lot of people jumping off the Iowa State train after their loss. But those teams right there feel like the group that we've kind of landed on. And I still put Utah in there even with one conference loss. Now, a loss on Saturday night, I think, will change the narrative that everybody has about this team right now, which is even though they got by Tech, they're still a team that will have something to say about this in the end. Now, it's going to be interesting on Saturday night because Arizona State, at least so far, they have been pretty stout against the run, but they have been able to get God through the air. So can Devin Dampier do against Arizona State what he's done against inferior opponents so far? And yes, Devin is dynamic. He can run it. We saw it last year in New Mexico. We've seen it so far here with the Utes. But if Arizona State's running defense is what the data says it is, Devin's going to have to throw the football. And what does that mean as far as the ability to win this game? And, you know, we keep talking about Sam Levitt's tunnel vision on the Jordan Tyson kid. Well, Dallin Bentley does have 22 catches, but Ryan Davis, as far as wideouts go, Ryan has 36 catches, and the next wide receiver as far as number of catches would be Tobias Merriweather, who has 6. Okay, so again, Dallin has 22, and obviously it's nice that Devin and Dallin have kind of this synergy. They throw it out of the backfield. Unfortunately, Hunter got hurt. He was already in double digits. Smith Stone does have 13 catches. I should point that out. But I wonder what we will see with the dynamic of the defensive players playing on offense. Now, against West Virginia, we saw Lander get a good handful of snaps. They didn't throw it to him. All we know about the injuries is that none of them are season-ending, but will Jackson Benny go coming up on Saturday? I don't think we're seeing Nate Ritchie anytime soon. We've already lost the Rabbit Evans kid, and yes, most of these injuries are to the safeties. But if your defensive backfield is compromised, it makes it all that more paramount to keep Smith upright, right, to keep him healthy. I was a little bit taken back and, quite frankly, stunned. Well, I'm taken back and stunned every time Trevor is in studio, no matter what, every time Trevor Riley is here, because he tells me a story of some road rage incident where a guy in California tries to fight him and he knocks him out and drives away, or he drives a truck down to Mexico and gets gas and takes it back up to California and sells it. He might just be in Hawaii now. He might just have flown out today just to hang out for a month. I'm blown away every time he's in studio for a bunch of different reasons. But Trevor being so adamant about the lack of depth for Utah football this year honestly struck me and resonated pretty in an interesting way. Now, I probably should have been more on top of this based off of what we've witnessed around all of college football. And if you missed the Lane Kiffin interview last week with ESPN, he alluded to this dynamic, and he was talking about the biggest and best programs in the SEC down south, right? So this isn't a problem that only the University of Utah is running into. And, you know, I think a lot of people believe that Nick Saban essentially bounced because the Saban model was no longer possible. And the Saban model is pretty simple. It's like, oh, I lost my defensive end. Okay, well, my backup is a 5-star too. And then the third stringer is a 4-star who's a freshman that we'd like to develop, but hey, we can play him as well. So whether you're Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, you know, or any of the power, the SEC, I don't know that has any elite teams this year. Maybe it's Ole Miss, maybe it's A&M, but Bama, Oklahoma, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, or Utah, all of these programs are running into the same issue, and that is back in the day, when these kids did not have the ability to get paid, which was always a crime, and I was loud about it for years. Let's say you're a 5-star recruit, and you're at Alabama, and you're a D-end, and you go into camp, and you're competing against 2 other 5-star recruits, and you don't get the opportunity to start. Well, back in the day, when you couldn't transfer, or if you did, you had to sit out a year, or money wasn't a thing, you simply had to stay there and compete for your job. And a lot of people believe that's a good lesson that an 18-year-old should learn, and that's not necessarily wrong. But now what happens is if you're a defensive end at Bama and you're a 5-star and you're not starting, then Lane Kiffin calls you, or Kirby Smart calls you, or Dan Lanning calls you, or Sharon Moore, or whoever, and says, hey, son, how about coming to my school and you're going to start right away, and by the way, I'm going to pay you 1.5 mil, or whatever the number is. And no one's going to say no to that, right? So that's why the depth issue has kind of permeated throughout college football, even the top-end programs, and, of course, the University of Utah, too. So that has to be one of the reasons why Coach Witt didn't necessarily go live during camp to make sure you stay as healthy as possible. And I wonder if that's going to motivate the coaching staff to kind of kill this whole, we're going to play some of our defensive players on offense. And I know you want your best playmakers making plays, period. But if this depth thing is as real as Trevor claims it is, it makes it even more important that you have to keep your most important players at their position healthy. So I'm interested to see if we see Smith specifically on the offensive side of the football on Saturday night. All right, we'll catch our first break of a Thursday show. Kyle Bonagura is our first guest, batting leadoff on a Thursday afternoon. Great to have you with us. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. 83% chance of rain Saturday night, about 8:15. That is pertinent information for you because that's kickoff time for Utah and Arizona State. Utah, 5.5-point favorite. Arizona State is the number 21 team in the country, according to the AP. 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the Big 12. So a big one Saturday night here in Salt Lake City. Our next guest joins us every week to talk college football. Maybe we'll sneak in a little soccer with our buddy Kyle Bonagura. Kyle, happy Thursday, buddy. How we doing?
Doing good, Spence. Looking forward to the weekend.
Yes, sir. And this is a big one. Kyle, it just comes down to this. Utah has beat the teams in front of them, that the talent gap is there, and Utah has been superior in those games. And then the one really good team they've played, they did not pass the test. Now, it was about a 3.5 quarter rock fight against Tech. Unfortunately, it got loose at the end. So if you didn't watch the game and you see the score, you think Tech came in here and smoked them. And yes, the score is the score. I'm not trying to, run away from that. But here's where I want to start. I don't think 2 losses is a death sentence or will completely eliminate you from a Big 12 championship potential. But 2 losses against 2 teams that you will be jockeying with at the end might be enough to kill a season. Just how big do you think this game is Saturday night for Utah?
Yeah, I think you outlined it pretty well. I mean, you just have to look back to last year, right? I think there was 4 teams that finished the regular season in the Big 12 with 2 losses, and I think I think Texas Tech is probably for me a tier above right now. But look, if you lose 2 games, you kind of take it out of your hands, right? There's tiebreakers that come into play, and you kind of got to get lucky with what your schedule looks like, who you lost to, and all of those things. So. It certainly puts you behind the 8 ball. And look, I think if you have 2 losses this early in the season, that also, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails too, right? Because then you're not going into the next game really believing that that's what you're playing for. It's more of like a hope and a prayer that you can kind of, muscle it out and hope for other results to go your way as the season progresses. So yeah, this is a big one. Arizona State came to the year with a lot of hype, and the Mississippi State loss took some of the buzz away, but they've bounced back pretty well the last few weeks. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a clear turning point game for either program. Arizona State doesn't have a loss in conference play yet, so maybe it's not as big for them, but it's certainly one of the biggest games that the Big 12 has on the schedule this year.
So where I've kind of landed with ASU, and we're all cosplaying as experts because the bottom line is none of us know week to week, but I think they're really good. I think they're very well coached. I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago. And it's not just the Scadaboo thing, but part of it is that because both BYU and Utah fans got Scadabooed hard last year. Now, Raleek Brown, former 5-star recruit and, former USC Trojan, is having a good year, and he's a good back. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Leavitt last year, Kyle, was 2nd in the Big 12 in QBR. He's 11th this year. Now, he has Jordan Tyson as his main option, but he hasn't landed on like a preferred second option. There's some tunnel vision there. So just kind of big picture, where are you at with this ASU team as far as what Ute fans should know about their opponent on Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, Brown's good. I mean, he's going to finish the year with probably well over 1,000 yards. He doesn't catch the ball as well as Scadaboo is. He is up there in targets for Leavitt, I think, just as a product of the design of the offense. But he's not as impactful catching the ball that way. I kind of like him in open space. He's not he's just a different type of back, right? And so. A lot of love for kind of him as a talent. But look, I think Scadaboo was special, and he was so important to what they did. I mean, the entire game plan revolved around getting him the ball in various ways. And so without him, that was always, I think we knew there was going to be an adjustment there. It was just like the all-purpose numbers were so big that it was like, well, you just can't replace that and expect to function at the same level. But without him, it just doesn't seem like Leavitt is as confident, without Scadaboo around. I mean, you pointed out Tyson, he's a good player, but he's really the only one. I mean, I think there really isn't another receiver on the team. I think, Metayer, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name correctly, the tight end is kind of been a reliable option at times, but, Tyson is the only receiver with a touchdown reception on the roster, and that says a lot, right? he is focused so much on him. And I think, look, if there was more options, it makes Tyson more effective, right? Like, he was so good last year in part because the defenses were so key there on Scadaboo, and now, like, he's still putting up numbers, and that's with him being the focal point of the offense.
So I know data isn't everything, and because and at some point I think this problem will rectify itself. Okay, because I still believe we are moving into a world where the non-con schedules will be a little bit more difficult for teams, and therefore a little bit easier for us to ascertain who these teams are. But the data indicates Arizona State has been stout against the run, but they're vulnerable in the air. So I think Devin's going to have to throw it. And when you look at what we've seen so far, Devin's been accurate and good against lesser competition. And the reports were he was dealing with an ankle against Texas Tech. I don't know if that's, after the fact autopsy excuse or real. Who knows? But have you seen enough from Devin Dampier as far as the throw game and with his arm to believe that he can do against Arizona State what he's been able to do when the competition hasn't been as stiff?
I mean, that's a good question. I think, like, for me, the Texas State, maybe the injury was part of it. It almost surely was. But, like, for me, the lasting kind of image I have from that game, the Texas Tech-Utah game, was everything was just so off schedule because of the defensive line for Texas Tech. And,
Yep.
like, because it just changed – the plays were just not being run as designed because of the pressure. And that really is just a credit to Texas Tech up front. We know Utah has one of the best offensive lines they've had, and to get kind of manhandled the way they did was just so surprising. It's hard to forget about it. And I just don't think that's going to be an issue against Arizona State. Like, again, like, they've been good up front as well, but they're not as good as Texas Tech is up front. And I think the Utah offensive line should – have more control than they did when Devin didn't look good, right? So I think he'll be able to throw it. I think they'll be able to run it. I do think that Utah's going to be able to move the ball well in this game. I don't have any concerns that they're going to kind of be slowed down by Arizona State. I think it's kind of goes the opposite way. Like, is this a game where Arizona State can kind of get rolling? They've shown some progress the last few days, a few games, I should say. Offensively, I thought, after looking really mediocre against Mississippi State. So for me, it's how does the defense stack up this game, and does it do enough to complement the offense?
So, final thing here, and, I, like you, don't necessarily make predictions and then, track them and lean on them because I'm wrong all the time. But my gut tells me Utah will win the game. It's a home game. It's a Saturday night where it's going to be rainy and cold. Night games at Rice Eccles, it's like a different level of passion and noise and intensity. Levitt's a veteran kid. He's not going to be rattled by it. Utah's a 5.5-point favorite. That feels right. I think Utah probably wins a close one. You got to lean on this at all? Kyle, what's your gut tell you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the line would be a little bit closer, just because I think, like, sometimes, like, there's like Utah's unranked, right, and Arizona State is ranked. So anytime you have like an unranked team as a favorite against a ranked team, like, I think it's deserved. I think Utah's the better team and, like, should be ranked, and Arizona State shouldn't. But, like, at the end of the day, like, that stuff does influence betting patterns. People will see the number next to the name and put value on that. So. Yeah, I think I would lean close to Utah, but certainly I feel strongly that Utah's going to win this game.
BYU is so far clean, and they've passed every test that has been put to them. And the only question is, how difficult are the tests that they've passed? Tucson can get weird, as you know, this road trip when they're going to take on Arizona coming up on Saturday. They're going to kick off, about 6 o'clock Mountain Time on ESPN2. BYU's a 1.5-point favorite. And I thought the line would be a little bit bigger than that. BYU, the number 18 team in the country. Arizona is coming off a shellacking of a Mike Gundy-less Oklahoma State team after they got trounced against Iowa State. They did win against K-State. How good is that? I mean, Noah Fafita, veteran quarterback, home. It feels like a little bit of a sneaky, tough test for BYU. What do you make of what we could see as Brigham Young travels down to take on Arizona?
So I really like Fafita. I mean, I was really high on him going into last year, and they just didn't live up to expectations. But it seems like they found some of what was missing last year. They changed coordinators on both sides of the ball, it seems to be working. I mean, they laid an egg against Iowa State, but Iowa State, is a pretty good team. That game was in Ames. This is for me clearly the hardest game that BYU will have played to this point. I do think BYU should expect to win this game. The one feels real low for me. I would have put this around, maybe 6 or 7, maybe up to maybe like 5 or 6. But yeah, I think we're still learning what BYU is going to be offensively, and I think we talked about it before. So it's like they were able to kind of ease into this season with such a light early season schedule. And for Bachmeier, that couldn't have been scripted any better as a true freshman, getting to build some confidence. And you should. I guess my theory is that they should be able to improve significantly on offense with a true freshman over the course of the year. Like if you're Arizona State, I guess, and you have the veteran guy back there, Levitt, you kind of know what he is to a degree, right? It's the jump from week 1 to week 7 shouldn't be as significant as it is for a true freshman playing their first college ball. So yeah, BYU hasn't necessarily looked explosive on offense throughout the year, although they did show some signs against West Virginia, I think. But this is the first real test on the road against a team that has their own aspirations of competing for the conference title.
So Trevor Riley, who played college ball here for Utah, then went on to play in the NFL for 5-6 years, was in studio yesterday. And he brought up something that maybe I just should have been a little bit more aware of. And the way he kind of expressed it was pretty interesting to me about what he perceives to be a serious lack of depth for Utah now, over the past couple of years. And Lane Kiffin interview, I think you guys did it, at least I saw it on ESPN.com, talked about this dynamic among some of the best teams in the SEC and some of the best teams in college football, because once upon a time, Nick Saban could lose a defensive end and just be like, okay, I've got another 5-star right here to plug in. And now if you're a 5-star recruit and you're not starting, back in the day, if you wanted to transfer, you had to sit out a year. And back in the day, there wasn't a paycheck to chase. Well, if you're not starting at Bama, Kirby Smart will call you, or Steve Sarkisian will call you, or whoever, and say, I'm going to pay you $1 million to come play for me. And you leave and you go get the money. You go get the time. Is this an issue that you feel is permeating throughout college football? The inability to have the depth that you once did because these kids can now go get paid and just transfer and go play where they want to play?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, right? Because it really levels out the depth charts everywhere. Because if the guy is leaving Alabama to go to wherever, go to Texas, well, that means someone's leaving Texas to go to Texas Tech, and someone's leaving Texas Tech to go to North Texas, right? So it just funnels it down. So you have a bunch of guys in the past, you signed with your Group of 5 school, right? Because you didn't have the offers to go to the bigger places. You're probably not as good as some of those guys riding the bench elsewhere, but now those guys get shuffled around for money, like the reasons you pointed out. And so maybe there's more of a depth issue for the better teams, but I kind of feel like it's still the same pool of players, right? So it's maybe the teams on the lower end are better up front. They still have depth issues. I haven't really given it much thought. I'm kind of working it out in my head as we go over this. It's an interesting concept. Actually, might want to look into that further, because there's you kind of open one door. Where does that lead you, right? It's a balancing act with where the kind of the talents move it around in college football.
Kyle, is UCLA good now? Watching Utah dismantle them, my takeaway was, yes, I think Utah's a really good football team, but UCLA might stink. And Nico Iamaleava, against Penn State looked like the kid that we saw oftentimes at Tennessee. And when he transferred, there's a reason that was such a big story. If your backup cornerback transfers, nobody gives a rip. Nobody writes about it. If a really good quarterback from a really good football team decides to go find a new place to play, one fan base will be upset. The other fan base will be very excited. But I'm telling you, I was traveling last weekend, and when I got the alert on my phone for the Penn State UCLA score, I thought that they messed it up. I thought they got it backwards. So I had to go check in other places if it was real. But it was real. How stunned were you to see a UCLA team that had not won a football game this year beat Penn State last week?
Yeah, not only have they not won a football game, they hadn't had a lead in any game all year. They were 0-4 and then never held a lead, and that included games against UNLV and New Mexico, right? So they weren't just losing; they were completely they were not competitive in any way. So it's an interesting case study because, look, I think like when Utah beat UCLA, like I think we even talked about it then, like, is UCLA a good team? No, they're clearly not a good team, but they do have guys, right? Like they have individual talent at UCLA. It's not like you're playing San Jose State or someone that is just completely in a different tier from a talent standpoint. It always felt like this was a team that was just poorly coached, and just that was the difference. They've got good players. They've got guys on this roster who are going to play in the NFL. Nico obviously was a sought-after recruit coming out of high school, did some good stuff at Tennessee last season. And so it I guess what this shows you is it just shows how much coaching matters in football and just buying and all those things. And this wasn't a fluky win against Penn State either. Sometimes you see an upset where it's like, okay, they just like a bunch of unusual things happen in the game to allow it to happen. Like UCLA moved the ball all game. Like it was like watching a completely different team, and you got to give credit to Jerry Neuheisel calling plays. I mean, I remember when he was at UCLA and he came on and kind of off the bench had it like the I forget who it was off the top of my head. He had a big, I think it was Texas where he had a big game and kind of saved them. And I remember Jim Morris saying like one day Jerry Neuheisel will be the head coach at UCLA. That stuck with me then because I was like, oh, that's an interesting comment to make about a player who is on your roster now. You're already pointing to like he's going to be a coach, and I think what he was saying is that like, look, this guy gets football. He's obviously the son of a guy who had a lot of success as a college football coach, was kind of groomed into this life. He went to UCLA. He kind of feels like he was destined for that. Like everything he accomplished as a player was because of his like understanding of the game. And here we are 10 years later, or whatever it was, and it kind of looks like you're one step closer to that becoming a possibility. He's not going to be the next head coach, but you can kind of see a world where down the line that could eventually happen.
So as a lifelong, long-suffering fan of the New York Jets, I'm no fan of Bill Belichick. However, as we move over to this cluster with Carolina now, the thing about the Patriots' run with Belichick is there was some drama, like Spygate, Deflategate, all the gates, all the cheating that the Patriots did during their great run. But they were kind of known as an organization, and it's the same way that the Utah Jazz have always operated. It's really hard to get information out of an organization the way that it was run in New England. And again, there was some drama here or there, but this is like next level. And I don't know what to make of the report that surfaced yesterday that apparently Belichick was willing to pay $1 million to get out of his contract, signed a 5-year deal in December. Lombardi sends out a letter to the donors saying, hey, this is a rebuild, be patient. The reports are now that over the past 24 hours, Lombardi and Belichick have been on the phone to recruits like, hey, none of this is true. But when there's this much smoke, there has to be a little fire. And obviously it's not going well. I don't want to make the blanket statement that NFL guys can't do the college thing or vice versa, because plenty of examples would be going in the other direction. But what's the Kyle Bonagura take on what seems to be utter chaos with North Carolina football right now?
Yeah, for me, it kind of feels like, look, this is a guy he's the most successful coach in NFL history, right? I think that's like, by the numbers, it's hard to dispute that. I think he kind of just assumed he could come in and be Bill Belichick, and that would be enough to win football games. That look what I accomplished in the NFL. And now I'm going to be going up against, Wake Forest or whoever. This shouldn't be hard. In his head, it's probably it's kind of how I just imagine it more than anything. The Mike Lombardi hire was an absolute joke. He has no business running a roster in college football, right? He's just not at that point in his career where that makes any sort of logical sense. It's almost like Belichick hired his buddy to do the job he wasn't qualified for, and kind of overestimated his own ability to coach college football. Like, just made the assumption that, hey, look, I'll be able to coach in a way that people will adapt to quickly. What I've kind of heard other people speculate about, people around that program that understand it, is that he doesn't really communicate well with the college players. There's jokes to be made about, relating to people in that age group with his own dating history right now. That I'll stay away from beyond that. But it is entertaining to watch, like a car crash would be, right? I mean, I'm going to be going to the game at Cal in a couple weeks. That's on a Friday. Excited to see that one up close because I was really interested to see how this would play out just because he's the name and that makes it interesting from the jump. But now that it's like gone this direction, it's almost more interesting to see how he copes with it because he's just so arrogant as a coach. And, it's hard to be arrogant when you're losing games to, UCF and TCU and you're kind of barely getting by Charlotte. So a lot of fun for people to root against, I guess.
Another just massive college football storyline, and there's a lot here when it comes to having the name Manning and playing quarterback, period, is what has happened with Texas. And, I've heard from more than a few people that don't necessarily believe the hype around Steve Sarkisian is earned. And when you look at results, maybe there's something there. Sark obviously played his college ball here for BYU. Now, to be fair, I don't feel like the offensive line has been great for Texas. The wide receivers just don't appear to have breakaway speed. They can't run the football. So there have been moments when Arch has not been protected, but the moments that he is, there's something going on as well where he's simply missing throws. Yes, he's a first-year starting quarterback, but he was in the program last year, and we saw a couple of snapshots that actually looked pretty promising. We already talked Penn State. The preseason AP 1 and 2 teams were Texas and Penn State, who are now out of the top 25 altogether. Red River rivalry, where Oklahoma is a slight favorite. That line might move based off the availability or lack thereof of John Mateer. But this feels like a must-win for Texas, or their season's done. What do you make of what we've seen so far from Arch and Texas as a whole?
I remember coming into the year, again, Manning, like the name makes it interesting, kind of like Belichick. But I also remember thinking the Heisman stuff just feels a little absurd.
For sure.
To be the Heisman favorite without ever having started, I guess he had a couple starts last year, but being a full-fledged starting quarterback, it was not earned in any way. And I remember writing at the start of the year, ESPN.com does the preseason player rank stuff. And Manning was, I don't know, he wasn't I forget where he was at. Maybe top 25 somewhere. But even then, I remember writing something to the effect of are we sure this is are we sure he's earned this yet? We're saying this guy is the 25th, whatever the number was, best player in the country, but we've actually never seen him play an extended amount of football at the college level. It is 100% a product of the name. And he came in as a big-time recruit, but now you kind of wonder, well, was he a big-time recruit because of the name as well? He put up the numbers and all that in high school and looks the part, 7-on-7s and all that. But now it's it's hard to argue with the idea that this is a lot of hype for nothing. And losing to Florida was bad. I think Texas is in trouble this week against Oklahoma. And even if they win this game, I don't see a world where they're able to get to the finish line, with fewer than 4 losses. It just doesn't seem possible. They get Georgia on the schedule. They got Texas A&M on the schedule. Even Vanderbilt is probably a better team than Texas right now. So, yeah, for me, they're not a legitimate playoff threat anymore. But of course, what do we know? These teams change week to week, as we've seen. So that's obviously a must-watch game this weekend.
All right, before I set you loose, we'll sneak in a little soccer. And no, I will not ask you about RSL Seattle at Lumen this weekend, but I will ask you about the U.S. men's national team. I think they have a friendly tomorrow against Ecuador, so we have some October friendlies. Diego Luna, our midfielder here, has been called up, and he appears to be a favorite of Pochettino and feels like he's locked in that slot for the World Cup that's 8 months away. My question is, what are we hoping to see in these friendlies? Your thoughts on the most recent call-ups, which will feature more of the big-name players. And finally, I'm going to ask you 3 questions in one. Who's our best 9? Who's our best striker?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. The roster is this is an interesting window for the first time in a while because so many of the call-ups under Pochettino have been just kind of mix match groups where you didn't have a lot of the A guys in camp together. It was like you would get Pulisic here, you would get Adams there, you would get, whoever, maybe Dest here. Anthony Robinson hasn't been around the team much over the last year. And so to have those guys, actually, I don't think Dest is in right now, but like to have a lot of the big names here in this window makes these games more interesting to watch because they become more of a reflection about what to expect, come the World Cup, right? So that's why this window is interesting. We have Ecuador, and then you got Australia on Tuesday. Two teams that are should be good competition, right? Luna, yeah, it's the fact that he has more appearances than anyone else in the last year with the national team is for me a clear indicator that he's on the plane right now. That Pochettino likes him and wants him to, expects him to be some sort of contributor, whether he sees the field in the World Cup. I think that's more the question at this point. And then, going to the 9 equation, I still believe in Ricardo Pepi. I think that, when he's healthy, he is really dangerous. He's been consistent with PSV when he's been healthy. It's either him or Balogun. Balogun within the U.S. shirt hasn't produced kind of to the level that I think a lot of people were hoping and maybe even expecting he would. I mean, he was scoring at a prolific rate in France when he pledged his allegiance to the U.S. Instead of going to England. And I think that, like, at the time, I remember talking with the president of U.S. Soccer, and he was really excited about it. Kind of the pitch was, look, you can come in here and you can be the guy from day one. The World Cup's going to be in the United States. You have a chance to be this big international star here and take advantage of all the limelight that's going to come with being the star 9 for the host nation. And it really hasn't played out like that yet. But from a talent standpoint, he certainly can turn that on. And it's the disappointing about the Pochettino era so far is that we just haven't seen those guys play together with Pulisic. We haven't seen him play with Tim Weah up front. Like the guys you would expect to be the difference makers haven't had a lot of reps together for a lot of reasons, injuries, personnel decisions like wear and tear, their own decisions to sit out. In the case of Pulisic and the Club World Cup last summer kept some guys out. So there's a lot going on to be interested in with the U.S. national team. So I'm particularly looking forward to the Tuesday game against Australia.
For sure. Kyle, good stuff, man. Enjoy the weekend ahead, and we'll get you back on next week, all right?
Sounds good. All right, see you.
All right, Kyle Bonagura covers college football and does a little soccer for ESPN. At Bonagura ESPN is where you find him on social media. Kyle stops by today, courtesy of our good friends at IFA Country Stores. With IFA Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More can be found at your local IFA or at ifa.coop. 1 hour in the books, 3 hours to go. Sam Bruckhouse, more football comes around the other side than Andy Larson. A lot to do. Thursday show. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Hard to believe this, but week 6 of the NFL starts tonight. Thursday Night Football, divisional battle between the Eagles and the Giants. Eagles a 7.5-point favorite at last check. That game can be heard on this radio station right after we say goodnight. Talk some pro football now with our guy Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports, on a Thursday afternoon. Sam, happy Thursday, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing well.
Appreciate the time. Let's talk about the game tonight. So Jackson Dart played his high school ball not too far from here, as you and I have talked about. The Philly storyline is interesting because of all the conversation about their lack of offense. A week ago, they allow a 14-point lead to evaporate in the fourth quarter when they actually did try to throw the ball against the Broncos. But Philly's still a healthy favorite. What are you looking for tonight? How do you think this one goes down?
The thing that I'm looking for is how this defensive front of the Giants can really shape up. They have a lot of talent and performing at a pretty high level. They've been the main bright spot of this Giants team amidst quarterback changes, amidst a rookie quarterback having a pretty turnover-laden game last week. The defensive front has been quite consistent with Lawrence and with Brian Burns and Kevon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter. They just have a lot of talent all the way to Bobby Okereke, the linebacker. And frankly, the Eagles front has been banged up and inconsistent. Currently, they are sitting in terms of pressure and sack rates in the lower quarter of the league. This is the first time that they've sat there by week 5 in several years. And I want to see if the Eagles front can really start to get it together. Right now, as you mentioned, the Eagles offense is basically solely based around Jalen Hurts scrambling. I don't think this is a game where he can really scramble to much success because of those edge rushers, that deep room of edge rushers that they have. And so it's really up to the offensive line to get in shape and really turn the leaf on this season and get that offense going this week.
Tell me what you've seen from Jackson Dart so far. I mean, the numbers don't jump out at you, and I understand why the move was made. I'm from that Northeast footprint, and I've got brothers that are Giants fans, and it seems like every single week there's speculation about Brian Daboll's job, and they were 0-3. So you make the switch, win against the Chargers, bad loss against a bad Saints team. But what have you seen specifically, Sam, from Jackson Dart?
Yeah, I think his ability to truly create with his legs just gives them a leg up over what they were seeing with Russell Wilson. The question is can he ever reach the heights that Week 2 game against the Cowboys that Russell Wilson hit? There's going to be inconsistencies, but right now he's been able to produce positive expected points added in the running game. He's working at about a 13% scramble rate, which is very high. And so I want to see if he can settle down. That was the pre-draft kind of skit on him, was that he was one read and then scramble. And now that his first read, his go-to wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, has gone down with injury, it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. Something that I picked up on, though, they were performing pretty well with 2 tight ends on the field. And just because of the game script, they had to go to a little bit more pass-heavy sets. I think especially given they're facing a terrorizing Eagles defense, basically has been the best in the league for about 18 to 19 games now, going back to last year. I wonder if they don't lock in on those heavy sets, those 12 personnel sets, if that chemistry with Theo Johnson continues to build and they hand the ball off a little bit to Scatterboo, use some play action, and we start to see some effectiveness from heavy personnel rather than just letting them go out there in some pass-happy personnel and kind of run around a little bit. That's what I'm looking for.
I was watching Thursday Night Football last week on Amazon Prime, and the Niners and the Rams. It was a really fun game, kind of a surprising result. The Rams were actually a pretty healthy favorite. And Al Michaels asked Herb Street a question about whether or not Mac Jones was a better fit with Kyle Shanahan than Brock Purdy was. It still feels a little early and premature to maybe make that statement. And, of course, the Niners paid Brock this offseason, so like it or not, he's around for a while. But Mac Jones, man, has been really impressive. It looks like he's going to get another start this week against Tampa. Is there a world, Sam, that exists if you're Kyle Shanahan where you feel like maybe Mac is a better fit than Brock Purdy?
I don't know if there's a world right now. We've seen Brock Purdy be able to take Kyle Shanahan's offense to places that we have really only seen guys like Matt Ryan take Kyle Shanahan's offense. What Mac Jones was able to do last week was take advantage of what the Rams gave them. The Rams trotted out basically 6 six defensive backs and forced Mac Jones to make accurate and quick throws underneath. The assumption was that he wasn't going to be able to do that. They were matching Christian McCaffrey and Kyle Juszczyk and the tight ends' tongues with small defensive backs, and it was actually pretty effective against the run as well. It was a very interesting game plan from Shula, the defensive coordinator of the Rams. They said, Mac Jones, you're going to have to beat us. You're going to have to throw 40 times. You're going to have to complete 35 of those. And he was able to do it. The question is, when you start facing more aggressive fronts, which basically started to happen in the second half when they were lining Jared Verse up all over the field, and they ended up shutting him down to 6 points. I don't think that you'll see those dry spells that you saw in the second half as the Rams came back with Brock Purdy. But more generally, this question of the ability seemingly of any quarterback, except for a brief moment with Trey Lance, but who's to say that he couldn't have figured it out? Basically, it seems like any quarterback can succeed in this Kyle Shanahan offense. This was something going all the way back to midseason last year I was writing about on SoonerSports.com, in that if you thought that you could get a backup, it was Sam Darnold 2 years ago, and now it's Mac Jones, who can really keep the chains moving. Does it really make sense to play Brock Purdy? At the time, what we were discussing was over Dak Prescott's contract. What the contract ended up being, I thought was very reasonable, in the correct lane of the Jared Goffs and the Tua Tagovailoas of the world. And so I think at cost, it's Brock Purdy's team still, but Mac Jones has surprised me this year.
So a lot of very shocking results a week ago. I don't know how shocking the Jags win was over the Chiefs. I mean, Kansas City, I think, was a 3.5-point favorite. Our guy, Devin Lloyd, who played his college ball up just about a mile from here, up the hill, with another interception, this time a pick six. Chiefs jump out to that 14-0 lead. Felt like they were going to kind of run away with it. But now Jacksonville's 4-1. What are you willing to say about the Jags, and then where are you at with the 2-3 Kansas City Chiefs right now?
You know, they say golf is a game of luck. If you practice real hard, you get real lucky. I'm starting to wonder if that's not the case with the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Here's a team who plays an immense amount of zone coverage. They're sitting at about sixth in the league right now. But they just have been able to generate turnovers. And who better than Devin Lloyd, the Utah native, to have a basically 102-yard pick six to turn that game around? It basically ends up being the major difference in the game. In the analytics community, you typically get a little hesitant to load a ton of trust into defenses that have very good EPA per play. They're generating lots of turnovers and explosive plays, as Devin Lloyd did on the defensive side of the ball, but they're allowing a success rate that's very high. In that game, Kansas City was able to move the ball down the field, and really the only time that the Jacksonville Jaguars really stopped them was that pick six, and I think that's why I'm a little skeptical of that Jaguars defense. However, if Trevor Lawrence can continue to play well and Liam Cohen can continue to orchestrate an effective run game, this is a team with a lot of talent. You have Brian Thomas Jr., who looked better last week. As someone who has been a wide receiver one on a team last year, and I still expect to break out this year, you have Travis Etienne, someone who has been a high-level Pro Bowl caliber running back who is performing as such right now. And you have Josh Hines-Allen as a defensive end. When you have key players at those premium positions, it makes for a pretty good mix. And that's not even including Trevon Walker, who's on the other side as a defensive end. There's a lot of premium talent on that team. I think it's just about getting it in the right place right now.
Getting late early for the Ravens, isn't it? You know, when you looked at the preseason Super Bowl lines, Baltimore was right there, along with Buffalo. We'll get to Buffalo in a moment, and I do want to ask you about the Patriots and Drake May, because that was impressive. We'll see what happens this weekend with the health stuff, but they have the Rams, and obviously a very good, talented team and very well coached. You fall to 1-5, and that might be curtains. But, of course, you know, when it comes to a team that is that talented when fully healthy, it's probably not smart to completely write them off. But what do you make of this 1-4 team right now, and do you have faith that maybe they can find their way back?
So if you recall, we were in a very similar spot last year. The difference was Lamar Jackson was healthy, number one, and number two was playing extremely well. Is he still playing pretty well? Yes, not quite up to the MVP caliber that we've seen. What I thought was interesting as I was watching film today is he's been struggling a lot when people are putting spies right over the center and having him mirror and having that linebacker mirror Lamar Jackson. across the line of scrimmage. He's been struggling with that a bit, and that's something we haven't really seen. I think it may be a little bit of an answer that was unveiled by the Chiefs kind of 2 years ago that teams have really caught on to, and I'm going to be interested in how that shows up against a team, like you said, that likes to line people up right over that center. And so when it really comes down to it, I think it's truly the defense that has to get it together. They are dealing with a metric ton of injuries across that defense, but they're just not going to be able to get it done with a 28th, 29th ranked defense. Last year, this defense was struggling at the beginning of the year, made some personnel changes, moved Marlon Humphrey inside, moved Stevens, who is now with the Jets, out to the outside. I think some personnel changes, or at least some strategy changes, are needed on the defensive side of the ball because they simply can't play Ravens football the way they want to without a strong defense.
I really thought, and this is based off of what we had seen. Of course, Joe Burrow goes down, but you could do worse as a backup if with Jake Browning, what he's done in the past with Joe's injury history, and just threw a ton of picks. So they make a move and they bring in Joe Flacco, and he's going to be under center on Sunday. With your knowledge of that system and the type of quarterback Flacco is, do you think he'll be able just to step in and understand the assignment he's tasked with?
Yeah, it's going to be very unique. I mean, when Joe Burrow is in that system, it is a RPO-heavy offense. It is shotgun-level passing, and it almost resembles more of a college system that we've become accustomed to than it resembles some of these under-center play-action style plays. I think the main difference between Jake Browning and Joe Flacco, or the question is can Joe Flacco get the ball more, literally just more count of times, to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? That's the name of the game with that team. If they're able to get the ball in the hands of those playmakers, it ends up going well. We saw Jamar Chase have good games with Jake Browning in the past. They just haven't been able to get him the ball for whatever reason. They've tried most everything, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see an offense trotted out there with Flacco that is more Jamar and T, you run deep down the field, and we're going to try to get the ball to you and see what happens. I think that's the strategy change that we're going to see this week.
Reference, I wanted to get to that Bills-Patriots game. I think it was 14 straight trips to Highmark where the Patriots lost to the Bills, and Buffalo is still, I think, the Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl, and certainly one game does not get you off a team that is quarterbacked by that guy and is that good. Wildly impressed with Drake May, Sam, and his ability to make plays must have been a really good night for Stephon Diggs. Stunned that the result went that way. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, the numbers back that up. Drake May right now is a top player in expected points added per play. He's doing well in the passing game. He's doing well in the running game. And this Patriots offense has played really well. But I do want to highlight one thing. They've been really successful as a result of their offensive line. What was once looked at last year as a weakness added players like Will Campbell at the left tackle position, who's performed very well, Morgan Moses at the right tackle position, who has performed very well, and that allowed Mike Onwenu, formerly who was playing tackle for the Patriots, to move to his natural position at guard, where he has been pass blocking very well. The ability of that offensive line to control the game has allowed Drake May to be Drake May and kind of create outside of the pocket and take a little bit more time to make downfield throws to guys like Stephon Diggs. I think the real question in last week's game was if they don't get those 3 turnovers against the Bills, some of which were pretty catastrophic, are they able to win that game? It's very difficult to win games with turnovers. As a result, I'm not as worried about the Bills more than as I'm surprised and excited to continue watching the Patriots.
At what point do we start to believe a little bit in the Colts, Sam?
You know, they have what it takes to win, which is a good offensive line and a good defensive line. I will believe it when I stop getting some of these games from Daniel Jones where it just seems to go completely haywire. We saw one a couple of weeks ago, and I guess you can kind of expect that every third game or every fourth game is going to look a little bit weird from Daniel Jones. They are in a competitive division now. I think in the early season when the Jaguars were still trying to get it together and had some shaky games, and the Texans weren't looking all that great, that it seemed like they were just going to roll over with their excellent defensive line, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, and their excellent offensive line as well. And I also want to give a shout-out to Charvarius Ward, the cornerback who came over from San Francisco and is performing at an all-pro level once again. So they have a bunch of guys who are playing extremely well, but I do think regression is nigh, and I would expect them to settle in around the 8, 9, 10-win team that they've been in the past couple of years.
I referenced the Niners and the Bucks, but I probably need to ask you about Tampa because I love this story. Now, I was never one that believed Baker should have been the number 1 overall pick, but I always liked him. I always liked his his competitive nature. I know there were some things that turned some people off. I don't give a rip. Just, what do you look like when you're on the field leading a team and trying to win? And it felt like he was just treated very unfairly by a certain portion of the American media that covers this sport. So they're 4-1, and he's in the mix for MVP. And like I said, I just think it's a really cool story. How real is this 4-1 start, and your thoughts on Baker Mayfield?
Now, if you want analytical Sam talking to you, the start is not that real. We've had extremely close games that have been won by an extremely small margin. Now, Baker has led game-winning drives in basically every single one of those games. And so when you really look at how efficient they are as an offense and what they're doing on a play-by-play basis as well, they're really, really good. And you have to give it to Jason Light, the general manager, and Todd Bowles for putting Baker in a position to win. They have Tristan Wirfs, probably the best left tackle in the league. They have an excellent quiver of wide receivers. They invested in Emeka Egbuka in the first round. Many people were surprised. Now he looks like a certified wide receiver 1 in this league, and that's even missing Mike Evans, who is probably the true wide receiver 1 on this team, and not even discussing Bucky Irving or Rashad White or Chris Godwin, all of which are very good contributors on that offense as well. They have a lot of weapons to play with on the offense, and so I think the reality of this team is getting the defense in a spot where it can really compete. Right now they're sitting at 21st in EPA per play. The back end has been kind of a struggle over the past 2 years, even though we've seen Antoine Winfield play really, really well. And so it's just a question of, can they get consistent pressure? Can they really back up that offense that's going to produce points at this point? We've seen them do it for the better part of 2-3 years at this point. I think that offense is real. I think Baker Mayfield is real. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a team, though, I'm a little bit more questionable about.
Before I say you lose, I keep referencing the Vegas odds, but you're a guy that understands the data and the numbers. So I'll just ask you, at this point, AFC, NFC, the team you have the most confidence in both conferences?
I really have the most confidence in the Lions again. In the early season, what you're really looking for is teams that are blowing out other teams. And the Lions, for the second or third straight year, are just absolutely mauling teams who are unprepared to face them. And they're doing that regardless of if Jared Goff has a good game, regardless of if the offensive line has a bad game. In the left tackle, Decker goes down. They bring in young player Giovanni Manu. He does not play well. They still absolutely maul a team. I'm so happy I can say that I'm back on the Lions train of them just being the best team in the league. And I think big kudos, in fact, is to Aiden Hutchinson on the other side of the ball, who has really stabilized that defense. They're starting to look really good with new defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard. They're having a little bit of issues at the cornerback position, some injuries to Terrion Arnold, who seems to – it was an indefinite injury. It looks like he's going to be able to come back. DJ Reed as well, the acquisition at the other cornerback position. They're going to have to get that locked down, but we've seen this team overcome that before. And so if Hutch is in the Honolulu Blue, I think that defense is going to be good. And as long as Jared Goff is slinging it behind a talented offensive line to talented skill players, I have the most trust that in any given game they can go out and win.
Sam, before I say you lose, tell our listeners about Sumer Brain, where they can find it, and can I use it to win $1 million on DraftKings?
So sumersports.com/SumerBrain. Spence, if you want detailed data that you can't get anywhere else, a lot of these, that zone stat that I threw out about the Jacksonville Jaguars, I went in and asked SumerBrain what the Jacksonville Jaguars split between man and zone was when Tyson Campbell, who was recently traded, was on the field. I quickly learned that he's going to a very man-heavy scheme with the Cleveland Browns. Perhaps explains a little bit why the Cleveland Browns valued him over Greg Newsome. So Sumer Brain, it's just like a chatbot, just like ChatGPT, but you have access to the best highest quality data available to you. And Spence, you can go in and maybe learn a little bit about your Jets. They have very high success rates right now. They're trending in the right direction there. So ask a couple questions. Let me know what you think.
Oh, man. I didn't want to bring the Jets up at all this hit, but thank you for bringing it up as you exit, Sam. Thanks for the time, buddy. Enjoy the games, okay?
My pleasure.
All right, Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports. Check out their new feature called Sumer Brain for advice on fantasy football, or if you just want to dig in and learn more about the numbers and what the data says about your favorite team. Sam stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. With IFA's Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now. In an early green up next spring, it's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More at your local IFA or at ifa.coop. We'll switch gears. Andy Larson will stop by. A really impressive pro basketball debut from Ace Bailey last night. Some hot shooting from Bryce Sensabaugh. Some good, some bad, but the Jazz lose. That's probably how it's going to be all year long. We will bring in Pobs today, Pablo Mastroeni, to preview RSL Seattle and talk a little soccer. Sports Court later on, then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Don't forget, we'll say goodnight at 6 in time for Thursday Night Football at the Meadowlands with the Giants and the Eagles. So no reason to change that dial. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Little Thursday night football comes your way tonight from the Meadowlands. It is the Giants and the Eagles divisional battle when we say goodnight just after 6 o'clock. Pablo Mastroeni will be our guest to start the 4 o'clock hour. Dramatic scenes at Lumen Field in Seattle on a rainy, cold Saturday night expected. RSL needs a result. We'll see if the lads can get it done without Diego Luna, Brian Ojeda, Xavier Gozo, who actually got the start today for the U22s. But the Utah Jazz played a basketball game last night, and they lost. But Ace Bailey looked awesome, which is probably something to expect all year long as far as the losses, and then getting excited about some performances from some of the younger players. Our next guest covers the Jazz. You know him, you love him. He's Andy Larson. Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm good, Spence. How are you?
I'm good. I've got to say, man, I was really impressed by Ace. And, I think I asked you about 3-4 weeks ago, give Jazz fans one reason to be excited about the season, and you said Ace. So, look, it's preseason. It's one game. I'm not anointing. You never anoint or dismiss based off of preseason ever. But what did you see from young Ace Bailey last night?
Yeah, he's not going to shoot 70% every game, but I got to say, I was impressed at how he got into his shots and just generally how he played, how comfortable he looked, right? I was, the worry with Ace Bailey was that the ball may stick a little bit and he may take tough shots, and then, the defensive end of the floor. I thought he competed on defense, and then I thought offensively, the way he fit into the Jazz's offense, still taking a lot of shots, but in the flow of things, right? They had him running off-ball screens, coming down off of pin downs, coming off of the baseline, coming up top and taking shots and getting opportunities that way. And so it wasn't that, they were running Ace Bailey pick and rolls. It was that he was getting the ball in the flow of the offense and then had the opportunity to then use his prodigious gifts in athleticism and ability to shoot and finish to get open shots and make them, So could not have been more impressed, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought he had one dime to Yusuf Nurkic that was really good. Was just great to see all the way around. Say it's preseason, defenses will get better. May struggle more against teams with more rim protection than what Houston has, but it's exactly everything you wanted to see as a Jazz fan with Ace Bailey last night.
Well, and it's a fan base that is looking for something to hold on to. Is it hyperbolic to say that this is the most exciting prospect since Donovan?
No, I don't. I absolutely think it's the most exciting prospect since Donovan. And it's the first top 5 pick since Dante Exum, and, maybe hopefully the first top 5 pick that's good since Darren Williams, right? This is, it's been a long time coming, and it's been probably too long of a rebuild process, given that Donovan and Rudy were traded 3 years ago. But it does feel like this may be a piece. This may be different because Ace just does have more talent, more potential than anyone the Jazz have drafted in the last 3 years.
I agree. Based off of your opinion, based off of your knowledge and understanding when it comes to conversations with the front office or Will Hardy himself, outline, a time frame, a plan. 31 minutes last night, right? And preseason hoops, NBA players don't play in regular season games, let alone preseason. Do you think we're going to see 30 to 35 minutes most every night as far as the playing time for Ace?
Yeah, I think so. You look at the 2 spot and kind of he can play at the 2 or the 3, I think. I think there's a real chance, and I think there's a good likelihood they start him, and then, you're in line for those kind of minutes. Look, they got to play Isaiah Collier, they got to play Lowry, they got to play Walker, and so the minutes are definitely going to be adjusted, but everyone knows what the deal is here, right? That Ace is that guy, is the guy that's going to be most likely part of the next good Jazz team, and so I don't think they are going to short his development. Now, what may happen is if he starts developing bad habits or isn't playing defense or whatever, I could see Will making an adjustment there, benching him for a period of time. But I think they're going to give him those opportunities. I don't, this is not one guy in a situation that I think you should be shy about, so long as he's doing the right things on the floor.
I don't love comparisons, as you know. We've talked about it over the years. I just think it puts ideas into the heads of fans, and then when Derek Favors isn't Karl Malone. We're like, well, wait a second, what happened? But, last night post-game, there was some conversation involving Will Hardy when there was a little bit of Jason Tatum. There was a little bit of Kevin Durant. I mean, look, Danny and so many other NBA executives, certainly the way Danny built Boston, you want big, long, athletic wings. And Ace is built in a very unique way with a skill set, and that combination, when fully baked, could breed something really exciting. Is there a best case scenario in your mind that you've heard that you think makes sense as far as the comp goes?
It's a good question because, I think what he can be and what he is and what he was at Rutgers are like kind of three different things, if that makes sense. So the one he's gotten, throughout his high school career was Kevin Durant, right? And so that he got to play him against him, and they were matched up against each other for most of that game. When they were on the floor together, it's extremely cool. I don't think he's Kevin Durant, right? Because it's just really hard to beat Kevin Durant, and he's also 4 or 5 inches shorter than Kevin Durant at this point. So, I think that is unlikely, but he does have some of that nailing tough shots thanks to a high release over defenders that Kevin Durant has. I think you look at kind of the other pieces. I'm just trying to think of some of the more athletic wings in the NBA. I think Jason Tatum is a reasonable idea. But I also think that there are kind of worst case scenarios too that, we should allow one game to kind of allow us to forget either, right? There are athletic wings in this league that haven't been able to hang as well because of shot selection and defense. And so that is still something to be concerned about. But yeah, think of, he's not quite as athletic bouncy wise as Tracy McGrady, but something like that. You are kind of talking about some of the best wings in the NBA though, right? Just because he is so fluid with it in a way that, again, we just haven't seen in a Jazz uniform in a very long time.
So no Markkanen, no Filipowski, no Walker Kessler. No Isaiah Collier, as you referenced earlier on, based off of the players that weren't available and the guys that Will decided to start and the guys that Will's decided to play. What were your takeaways based off of just that decision-making process with all of that kind of baked into the question?
Yeah, so, you figure that, they're not going to start Yusuf Nurkic, right? They're going to be starting Walker Kessler. You probably don't start Steve Mikhailiuk. You instead start Lauri Markkanen. Taylor Hendricks got the start at the 4. I think it's probably more likely he comes off the bench. But there is kind of that spot at the 2 guard to start Ace if you want to. And then, who starts at point guard, I think, is a real question between Keontae and Isaiah Collier. Obviously, the Jazz chose Isaiah Collier at the end of last year, and so long as I think he has a relatively reasonable training camp, I would expect that to be kind of the default. But they also are pretty happy with how Keontae has taken on more of a leadership role in this summer, and maybe that and maybe just the desire to get some more shooting out on the floor leads them to go that direction. So we'll see on that. But, Lowry's a starter, Walker's a starter. I think we've seen and they believe in that Ace can be a starter and maybe sooner than people expected. And then, yeah, you're looking for kind of connecting pieces. I think Taylor Hendricks and Kyle Filipowski kind of both make sense in different ways. And then, yeah, it's kind of a point guard battle at the 1 spot.
So when it comes to the minutes that the veteran players are going to get, and you and I have joked in the past, as soon as Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson are playing 20, 25 minutes and the young players' minutes are being cut into, that there's going to be a faction of the fan base that's going to be disappointed. But 20 minutes for Kevin Love last night, 17 for Kyle Anderson. What are your thoughts on the way that you anticipate Will using the vets and balancing out, needing to give minutes to the younger players so they can learn how to play in the NBA?
Yeah, I think, just looking at that injury report, you have 3 front court players who you expect to play significant time who weren't available, right? Lowry, Walker, and Kyle Filipowski. So, I don't anticipate Kevin Love necessarily even being part of the rotation on opening day if those 3 guys are healthy. I think Yusuf Nurkic is probably your backup center, but you can also play Kyle Filipowski as a backup 4/5, and we'll see what they do with that. I think Lowry is a 3/4/5, right? Like you can kind of play him wherever. So I kind of learned more from the backcourt rotation yesterday than the front court rotation. And then, Kyle Anderson is a wing. So, I think kind of if Bryce Sensabaugh plays as well as he did last night, he's going to get more minutes than Kyle Anderson or Svi Mikhailiuk just because you want the better, younger, more interesting players out on the floor. So, I don't really anticipate Kyle Anderson playing 20 minutes a night during the regular season so long as, these guys get healthy, which I don't think that these are major injuries, by the way. I think that these are I expect those guys to be ready for opening night.
So you referenced Keontae and a lot of conversation about his growth during the offseason, which typically I roll my eyes at because every coach and every front office after an offseason will kind of spin the narrative they want the fans to hear about. I thought he looked pretty good last night. The defensive stuff just continues to be something you leave shaking your head. There are just so many moments where there's just like an airheaded decision, like he just loses focus. He had 9 assists. He had 16 points. He was 7 of 11. Your thoughts on what you saw last night, your understanding of this narrative that he had an awesome offseason, and your expectations for Keontae George this year?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't necessarily buy a lot of that. It's a believe it when I'll see it kind of thing. I did think he played well offensively last night. I do think he tried defensively, and there were a couple moments in the first quarter where he made an impact. He stopped Amen Thompson on one play. But I do think he was part of the overall problem that, allowed the Rockets to score 140 points in the end, right? So in the end, I don't think that it was that different than the Keontae George that I'm familiar with last year. And, honestly, so much for him depends on him getting 5% better from an efficiency point of view, right? Like taking the 5% worse shots out of his game, making more of the threes, getting to the free throw line more often, making the right pass rather than looking for his own shot quite as often. And that stuff is so hard to tell from one game. You just need the big numbers over the course of weeks and months and years to kind of figure that out. So, I wouldn't say that last night, hey, I thought Keontae turned a corner, but I thought it was a good performance, and we shall see if that continues or over the course of time, the plus minus worries and the defense worries kind of bear out.
Who do you think the best perimeter defender is on this team? The dude when Durant is going off, or Tatum, or Devin Booker, whatever it is. Who's the best matchup defensively for the better offensive perimeter players as far as big wings go in the NBA?
I think it's Taylor Hendricks.
I agree.
And I don't think he told us on media day he wants to be the best defensive player in the NBA. He wants to win a Defensive Player of the Year award, which he has a long way to go for that. But I think he moves his feet at a really high level, not just for the Jazz but for the NBA in general. I think I can imagine him getting there. It's not. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think it is. I think it's possible. And the way he's changed his body, the way he's added strength, the way he moves, it was really great to see him play so well yesterday. The athleticism is clearly there. He's the one guy that has the opportunity to be a really, really plus defender. And so I like the idea of giving him those tough opportunities whenever the Jazz can, right? Ace was matched up against Kevin Durant last night, and that makes sense, and I like giving him those chances too. But Taylor's right there with him as another long wing who can stay in front and is excited about getting that work in on the defensive end. I'm excited for his defensive potential.
So, Sensabaugh, there was a little early on, and I remember thinking about this with Jabari Parker, who coming out of college, you just loved his skill set, but you're like, could the dude ever get into shape? And the answer was no, he just never did. Bryce looks better. He does. And man, that's a pretty jumper, man. I mean, it's a very aesthetically pleasing jump shot. 6 of 10 from 3 last night. He had 24 overall. There are a couple of things I've seen that anticipate maybe him getting a starting job with this team. I don't know that I anticipate that, but what do you think we'll see from Bryce this year?
Yeah, I think he could if there's kind of you just look at you probably got Ace ahead of him, Lowry Markkanen, and then if maybe he can play at the 2 or the 3 starting there, but there may just be too many other guys. But he also just does make sense as a sixth man because of his ability to score at all 3 levels. I think he's an extremely good shooter in a way that no one else on the roster is, and I think that is the thing that will carry him in the NBA. And I love that he has realized that. Talking to him at the end of last year, realized that, hey, 3-point volume is really important to me, and it sees himself maybe more as a specialist than he was at Ohio State, where he was just kind of an all-around scorer. But he does have the ability to, hey, if you close out on me, I will go past you and score in the mid-range or at the rim, which is great. The question is defense. I do think his body looks a lot better than it did last year. I don't think his defensive fundamentals are awesome, but I think they might be good enough, certainly to play on the Jazz and maybe to stick in a better situation as well. And ultimately, kind of the young guys, other than this rookie class, I buy his offensive potential as something that can stick in a role player capacity maybe as much as anybody else's. So, I think that Bryce is a legitimate kind of NBA prospect. I don't think he's like an all-star prospect, but I think he's a guy who can stick and kind of be part of that next. We're all trying to figure out, of these 8 young players they've drafted over the last 3 years, which of them are part of the next good Jazz team. And I feel like Bryce has a pretty good ability and good potential to be a role player on that next good Jazz team.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well. All right, a lot of good, but some not so good. And look, I know he's still young. It does look like he's put on some weight and he's been lifting, but Cody Williams last night in 13 minutes looked lost and didn't do anything well. It's a top 10 pick, man. And look, the data and the history indicates that plenty of top 10 picks don't pan out. So, and by the way, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying it just continues to not look great. Fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, look, he had one of the worst rookie seasons for a pick in NBA history last year. This year, for good things, and he had flashes in summer league, right? He had a third quarter here. I think it was a fourth quarter in a different game, that he did actually make an impact on the game, right? Drove to the basket, did some things, stole the ball, got rebounds, and it's just the thing is, in so many other games and so many of his minutes, he's Tony Snell out there, right? The 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks just doesn't do anything productive. And that can be okay. Hey, at least you're not getting in the way, so long as you can make 3-point shots. And that's what really, really worries me about him right now, is that he's not a good 3-point shooter, that he is, even in practice, even in at the East High School scrimmage last week, was barely hitting rim. He chucked one off the backboard that didn't hit rim in that scrimmage. Just it doesn't look great. So it sucks because I think he's a smart kid, and I think he understands the X's and O's of the NBA at a higher level than the other young players do. I think he gets a lot of his relationship with his brother in terms of understanding what he should be doing but he just doesn't actually do any of it. And it feels like until he turns on the hunger in his brain that in order to go after those rebounds, to try to make plays happen, there's not a lot to recommend him being on the floor right now.
All right, let's move to a couple of storylines just involving the team. Chris Mannix, friend of the show, when he gets back to us. The latest to report, the Jazz are very open to moving Lowry. Now, I know what Austin said, and I know what the front office has said in the past, and there's part of me that's dude, if you're going to do it, it's 2 years too late. But there's part of me that believes it's still the right thing to do, even though I love Lowry. He's awesome. He's fun to watch play. What's your understanding of this dynamic, and do you have a lean one way or the other?
Yeah, look, I mean, Danny and Austin saying, and we'll just say Austin, saying that, hey, it's not our intention to trade Lowry, I think is true. And yet, are they listening to offers and even, to some extent, reaching out for offers to try to understand what his value is around the league. Like, yes, absolutely, they did that this offseason, and absolutely they will continue to do that into the season and into the trade deadline period. They don't feel like they have to trade him, though, because, they still think, he's not a problem for them. He's not demanding a trade. He likes it here in Utah. He can conceivably be part of that next good Jazz team. But everyone also kind of knows, hey, like the timeline doesn't work out, and it is kind of it's a big bummer that he is the NBA's longest tenured player who has not made a playoff, who's not played in the playoffs. And so, basically, to me, it all comes down to whether or not the Jazz get a good offer for him. And I would define a good offer as multiple first-round picks, hopefully a first-round pick you can have that has some potential to be a lottery pick, and then, a good young player of some sort. A lot of discussion was around, the Detroit possibility there, right? You've got Tobias Harris matching from a contract point of view. You've got Jaden Ivey or Asar Thompson as maybe an interesting young player. Jaden Ivey needs an extension soon, but anyway. And then, a pick or two. And I think that offer does make sense. I don't know that the Jazz have gotten that offer. I don't know that they've rejected that offer, right? But I think there are kind of situations around the league where you can imagine it kind of adding up for the Jazz. But until then, they're just going to keep him and let him play and let him be on this team because he is a really good player that is happy here. And it's, again, not a problem.
Finally, and I know we touched on this last week, but let's just revisit it because technically the deadline to extend Walker is still a little less than 2 weeks away. It's something they still could do. Now, based off of Walker's response to Sarah's question during media day, it appears that that's probably not going to happen. And this is a rare thing. I'm not a fence sitter, but I do understand both sides of it here. I understand the desire to keep your financial flexibility if you're the Jazz. I understand maybe a hesitancy to allocate a tremendous amount of money to a player who's very good, but maybe doesn't fit the modern day, big, offensively skilled type player that you want to pay a lot of money to. And if I'm Walker Kessler, I'm saying that I put 3 good years here, and I'm seeing some of my peers get the extensions that I believe I deserve. I understand both sides of this situation, Andy, but any update as far as the Jazz and Walker Kessler's negotiations?
Yeah, no update. I truly do not anticipate it will happen. I've been told, in fact, that it won't. And I think for the reasons you laid out there, I understand why Walker is frustrated. Walker, frankly, is the guy in the locker room who is most disappointed when the Jazz lose games right now, right? Or I guess last season, was the guy consistently kind of fed up with, hey, I can't believe we're losing. He's just not used to losing to this degree and is the most upset about it. And so, when the team then goes and trades away veteran players like John Collins and Colin Sexton, after trading away Mike Conley in his rookie year and a gazillion other guys in the years in between, right? He's the one that's most frustrated by that. You also have the Lakers, who are the team that is most interested in Walker Kessler being the best situation possible for a rolling big man, right? That you get to play with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, or you get to play with Keontae George and Isaiah Collier. And it's just, it's a bummer for Walker that he's here without the benefit. And I think he likes Utah. I don't think that's the question. It's just without the benefit of any chance of contention, right? And or the benefit of the long-term money that a $100 million extension would give you. So totally understand why he's frustrated. Also understand why the Jazz aren't giving that extension right away. And so, anticipate this being him being a restricted free agent next year and going into that way. I've been told it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Before I set you loose, it's Seattle and St. Louis, and it'll be rainy and cold at Lumen in Seattle coming up on Saturday night for RSL. And if they don't get it, they will have a chance, I believe, to qualify if they beat St. Louis, who isn't very good. Now, no Diego, no Ojeda, no Gozo. Seattle's without a couple of pieces as well. It's a tough place to play no matter what. So your thoughts on the end of the regular season and your faith that we will see playoff soccer here in Salt Lake?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the St. Louis game because, you said Seattle's a tough place to play anyway. And then, while RSL has gotten some random fluky results up there, and maybe that happens again, I'm not sure I buy this team being kind of defensively stout enough to keep Seattle to a 0-0 draw, right? Like, I just don't know that I see that happening. And then the offense is still kind of stop-start depending on who they're playing. If they're playing a really good MLS team, that they find it hard to score. If they're playing a bad one, they can score a lot. And so it goes down to that St. Louis game where I do think they will be able to score, and they should be able to play well in that game. And you just need a win on the road against a bad team. It all comes down to that. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'll be watching that Seattle game for sure and seeing kind of what's out there. But like the St. Louis, it does feel like this is going to come down to the final game of the season, which is fun, but also terrifying as an RSL fan.
Yes, it is. Andy, thanks for the time, buddy. Good insight. Be well. We'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
Andy Larson covers the Jazz for the Trib, brought to you today by our friends at America First Credit Union. So if you're not currently happy with your bank situation, we've just started working with America First Credit Union. They are super great people, and they can kind of help you understand the landscape of banking with a more personal touch. And if you're a University of Utah athletic supporter or football fan, you should make the switch because you get a bunch of great benefits with our friends at America First Credit Union. So you can get the Utah Athletics Visa debit card, which is free with America First checking options. And then as the official credit union of Utah Athletics, they offer members very awesome perks, namely exclusive cardholder benefits. You get special ticket offers. As an America First member, you can score exclusive tickets and prices to Utah sporting events on Ticketmaster.com. And then this is really cool. Got a bunch of friends that utilize this. You get early game day entry. And if you've ever tried to get into Rice-Eccles Stadium when everybody is trying to get into the same time, it's chaotic. So beat the crowd, get into Rice-Eccles up to 2 hours prior to kickoff, 30 minutes sooner than the general public. All you have to do is show a valid ID and your America First Visa debit card to the security officers at Gate L in the southeast corner. So really cool stuff going on. Excited to have them on board with our friends at America First Credit Union, the official credit union of U of U Athletics. We'll catch a break and bring in Pablo Mastroeni coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Gut check time for RSL coming up this weekend. Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington, and breaking news that it will be cold and rainy in Seattle in October. Our next guest knows that. He coaches RSL. He played for a long, long time. Pablo Mastroeni on a Thursday. Pobs, happy Thursday, man. How we doing?
Happy Thursday, Spence. Doing great, bud. Yeah, packing the bags, ready for the cold.
Atta guy. And, you know, I always say this, fall soccer is fun, dramatic scenes. And so rainy and cold in Seattle, as a guy who's played up there when it's rainy and cold and coached up there when it's rainy and cold, how did the conditions change the game plan, Pablo?
Well, I think obviously with the artificial turf, playing in behind defenses is going to be difficult, right? I think especially when the ball's in the air, because it's going to skip quite a bit. So then you just have to find ways to get behind the defense with balls on the ground in between the lines. And I think that's probably the biggest difference. And then obviously in and around goal, deflections and rebounds will be critical, right? So we want to put the ball in dangerous areas and play for seconds because, again, the turf will add to the craziness of balls bouncing around the goal box.
So, you know, you're going to be without some pieces. They're going to be without some pieces. When you look at Diego with the U.S. men's national team, the U-22's advanced, which means Gozo will also not be with you. Ojeda with his country in addition to that. So how does that alter your plans when it comes to the 11 and the players available? Give me some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, I think we're at the money part of the business part of the season, and I think the most important thing is putting the players that are in the best run of form, that have probably the most experience in these moments on the field, you know, at the expense of maybe the game model and really, you know, tweaking it to put, again, you'll have a really good understanding of the way we want to play. That doesn't change. But as far as the specifics of what each position is meant to be doing, it's really about putting guys on the field that have been there and done that and are in a good run of form, and that can give us the best chance to win. So, you know, we've looked at a couple different things this week. It's looked really bright. The guys have been electric, full of confidence, and I think that's a big part too. You know, I think these games there's high pressure, and so when I'm watching training and assessing the training session, it's like, are they still playing with joy? You know, and today was a great reflection of that. The guys were buzzing and smiling, and the combinations and the goals were really, really bright, and it looked like they were enjoying themselves. And I think that's really important to have when you're going to high pressure situations in a difficult place to play like Lumen Field.
Well, when you're coming off a win against your rival, the food probably tastes a little better. The sleep is probably a little bit easier to find, right? So what'd you like most about a gutty performance last week against Colorado?
Yeah, you know, I think it says a lot about our group where there's been times this year we've given up leads, and that's something that we've worked really hard on the last few months is being stingy defensively. And, you know, although they had quite a few opportunities there at the end, you know, I think the guys held on and defended set pieces well, defended in and around our box well. Rafa, again, came up huge. Jake Ladd was excellent in the waning moments. And so, you know, one of the things that those were the positive things is the mentality and the ability to stay in games and get the result. I think one of the things that we want to definitely take away from that game and improve upon was the decisions that we made when teams are throwing a lot of numbers forward and they're chasing a goal, is when we win the ball, there's always going to be a lot of space to really attack our opponent's goal. But I think there's got to be more, a bit more experience in the way we manage these moments, because even though there could be another opportunity to get that second goal, it comes with the opportunity to let our teams back into the game by not getting that goal and then having a transition moment that keeps us pinned in close to our goal. So that's an area that we focused on this week, and I think it's an area that will be critical heading to Seattle as well.
Before I ask the question, I feel the need to put this context on the question. I think it's safe to say that MLS Cup is probably more of a priority than the Rocky Mountain Cup. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there, Pablo, before I ask you if there was any thought about being a little bit more aggressive in the attack down the stretch to get that second goal to win the Rocky Mountain Cup.
Yes. Again, I think the game, if we can call timeouts, Spence, we'd flip this thing around and we'd set it up. And unfortunately, in soccer, it doesn't work like the other sports. We want to be aggressive at all times, but we also want to manage games, and we want to be. Again, I don't want to try to go for the second goal at the expense of conceding.
Yes,
right. And I think that's where we found ourselves because, we had, I think, 3 really good opportunities in that second half to put the game on ice. Right. I think Victor had 2, one off the post. One where he cut inside from like 12 yards out and hit it over. I think him and Willie had a couple combinations. So we had opportunities for the second goal. But what happened was when we didn't capitalize on those opportunities, they came back the other way, and now we're threatening. And so it's the game of soccer, and I'd love to just punish teams and do that. But the problem is the reason for that, why it's not so easy, is because the players get caught in this emotional game, which is we have the goal, right? And when we were attacking those transition moments to get that second goal, if you watch, we had 3 or 4 guys attacking, and then we had the rest of the group kind of lagging behind. Not lagging behind because that's a part of our tactic, lagging behind just in case those guys up front lost it. And when they did lose it, then we had 40 yards between our lines, which then forced 6 guys all the way back, and it forced 4 guys to chase the game from behind. And so one of the things that I keep talking about is when we're in these moments where we have the lead, the best way to score another goal, well, not the best way, but the most, I guess, the best way to not lose control of the game is to move together with the ball, right, and have 11 guys attacking versus 4. So to answer your question, of course, we want to go for the second. We want to go for the second goal, and we put ourselves in position to score the second goal. We didn't score it, and that's football. But okay, so now because we didn't score it, we must defend. So I don't want to absolve defending at the expense of trying to go get a second goal when we already have the 1-0 lead.
No, for sure. And, when I saw that there was a little bit of criticism going around, my first thought was, okay, you push forward, they counter, and then boom, like your playoff hopes might be shot. So ultimately 3 is what you wanted and 3 is what you got. I think this is the 3rd straight game that you've had the same 11. Is that right, Pablo? 3rd straight game, same 11 has started?
I believe so. There might have been I think that was right.
Okay, is it fair to say that this is as close to a first choice 11 that we've seen?
Yes, and I'd say the one guy is probably Gozo, who was away.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, so it's close to it, and then I think again 1 or 2 players. You can flip flop a couple guys, but I think the consistency has been a really important thing, and having Diego and Diogo underneath, 2 strikers up front with DeAndre barreling down the right side and Alex on the left, 2 pivots, Jay Glad Vera and Hoffa. I think it's been our most cohesive group. So it'll be really important to get, again, most of these guys that we can on the field, and then adding, like I said earlier, some experienced players and guys that are in good run of form and guys that can make plays and have proven over the years to be able to make plays for our team.
If Gozo's present, just out of curiosity, where does he fit in, and who might go from 11 to the 18?
Yeah, I think it's and currently in the way we're doing it, and I think that's the difference with Gozo, right? If we keep it the same, then I think he'd be vying for one of the forward positions.
Gotcha.
So maybe some Cruz might, him and Cruz might rotate, just because again I think what he's done really well is. You just threaten the back line and do a good job. And obviously the last time he played 9 for a really cameo spot role was against LAFC when he scored probably one of the best goals of the season for us in that bicycle. So he's a poacher. He's an opportunist, but he does a great job of getting in behind defenses especially when you have 2 10s behind him feeding them balls.
It's pretty safe to say that central defensive midfield spot has tremendous depth with a lot of really good players that you could rotate in and out. We talked last week about Emeka, who started the season off with the captain's armband, but you also have Paulo Ruiz as an option, of course, Ojeda, and Caliscan, who's certainly a lot more versatile than I ever knew that he would. He was. So I, instead of asking you about your thoughts on the rotation, I wonder if you could shed light on whether or not you have been satisfied with the response of the players that aren't starting. Like, Emeka last year was one of your best players, and now, he's not starting. So have you been pleased with the acceptance of the role, or do you think there's some hurt feelings, I guess?
No, I think there's always. I mean, these guys are professionals.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
they're so. This is their career, So it's not like college sports or high school sports where they're like okay with it, But there is this level of character and team that you expect to see with a certain level. There's got to be a certain level of disappointment. If there's not, then you're just thinking, well, is this really what you're meant to be doing? So I think both Pablo and Emeka and Emeka in particular, because Pablo's been injured for a little bit and he's just not joining us and getting up to speed. But I think he's been a fantastic pro, and I think coming into games and you can see that by the way he comes into games, right? And affects, comes in the last couple games and does a really good job, really focused, understands what the role is, does a great job. And we have dialogue and the truth is, when you look at, what Noel and Brian have been able to do in these last few games and even in the LAFC games where they played extremely well, the other players see that, that it's not like they go, there's no way that these guys are playing well, and they're getting results as well. So it's not only about their form, but are we winning as a team when the other guys are playing well? And then what's the response for the guys that aren't playing? How are they training? What's their attitude like? And Emeka and Pablo have been top, and I think this weekend is a great opportunity for both of them to see some time and to contribute in a meaningful way. And then, we get a good result here. Now it just changes everything for everyone else. And now we got to go back to, which players are in a great run of form, which players are, and then maybe in amongst it, we see a different tweak to our system that we haven't seen all year. So there's a lot of positives that can come out of this situation. And the most important thing is that the players that are getting the opportunity to take it the right way and express themselves the right way and play some great football, and we get the result.
Most every week, it feels like I ask you a question about Rafa, and I don't know that I have one this week other than just, he just continues to be as good as anyone that we've had in that spot since Nicky was there.
Yep.
When you have a keeper that is able to keep you in games with such miraculous saves, then the ability to distribute from the back, does that allow you as a tactician and a coach to change your approach in the way you play? And what does it do for the confidence of the group in front of him?
Yeah, no, he's been, again, I think it does, and the other part too is with his experience, he understands moments, right? And there's moments where, we have to kind of abort the way we kind of planned because the emotion of the team requires something different. Maybe we have to go long for a goal kick or two. And I think him having his finger on the pulse of the emotional state of the team is really, really important. And so, I think a player of his capabilities that is so good with his feet, essentially there's no tactical adjustment that he can't adhere to, that he can't manipulate to favor our group. So there's he's got the short passes, the mid-range passes, he's got he's got a longer pass over the top. And then as far as defending, for me, he's been the best goalkeeper in this league and consistently keeps us. And it's not just he makes saves; it's the timing of the saves. We're up 1-0, and Colorado have a shot in injury time or two shots in injury time, and he comes up with both of them, right? And so that is what I when I talk about it, and I always talk about making plays. What is that? That's what it looks like. And it's the same thing as a striker finishing one of our chances in transition. That's making a play, right? That goes outside of the tactics. It's outside of, what we drew up. It's about making plays because you're a great player. And I think Rafa has continuously put himself in a position to be, at his age, top goalkeeper for this year and probably, a few more years with the way he's currently playing.
So I referenced the players you will be without, and Seattle is also missing a good chunk of pieces based off the international window. And also, I'm just reading this. Albert Rusnak, who we know here, obviously picked up a red card, so he will not be playing. And I'm looking at the standings, Pablo, and they can't move up or down. I think they're pretty much locked in. So I wonder just look. As you referenced, you guys are all professionals. They're playing at home in front of their fans. You want to win every match. But what sort of approach are you anticipating from Smetzler based off of who they're missing and where they land in the standings?
Yeah, I think, the most important thing, the way I perceive the situation playing out is Brian Smetzler is going to put his best group that he has available to him on the field for the game on Saturday. And there's really no other way. There's really no other way. And I say that because, and Spencer knows this better than I do, is you have to have, there's nothing better than to be in a good run of form heading into the playoffs. And so to play coy in this particular game because that, it just doesn't really make sense. Even if they're locked in a certain position, you want momentum going into the playoffs. And so the expectations I have is that they're going to put the best group that they can field on Saturday against a team that's, fighting like hell to get in the playoffs.
If you win, you are in, and that's the bottom line. Now, if you lose, you're not eliminated. You'll have another chance against St. Louis. But does the magnitude of the moment, does the urgency to lock in a playoff spot, does it change? I know you want to win every game. I know you want to score every, you want to win 10-0. I know all that. But does the magnitude of the moment come into the way you're preparing for this game and you're preparing your team? And from a player's standpoint, do those things come into play at all?
Yeah, again, I think as you rightly pointed out, we want to win every game. But I think I think when it's a really important game, it's really about speaking of the things that we can control, right? I think when you get caught in this the enormity of the match, because if we win, we're in, and you think about how the players will digest all that stuff, right? So it goes back to process, and it goes back to here are the things that we need to do. Listen, the players, they're bright. They follow the table. They know the standings. They have social media. They know all that stuff. And so for me, it's really about focusing on the things. Like I said, from our last game, our attacking transition, we have got to make better decisions if we want to win these games, right? So that's an area that I'll be looking for, and that's an area that we focused on this week. Defending. We're going on the road. We got to be a good defensive team. That's an area that we focused. And then today we finished the week with, combination play in front of goals. We've got to score goals. So to answer your question, Spence, like my approach to all these things in life and is not allowing the moment to emotionally hijack you, right? It's to get down especially in high emotional moments, high pressure moments. It's to dial it back, get back to the things that are very controllable and the areas that we need to improve upon to put ourselves in the best position to get 3 points.
Last thing, I'll set you loose on this. And now that we have a pretty healthy sample size with the summer window acquisitions, I think we were all hoping that the earlier window would breed better results, due respect to Willie and Johnny. But I kind of felt bad for you that you were going to have to try to get this thing done really quickly when you guys were in a bit of a precarious spot. But Olatunji, man, he's an athlete, and he looks dangerous. Rowan Cruz, and then DeAndre Yedlin. Just give us a little bit of a progress report on those three, then I'll set you loose.
Yeah, I think I'll start in the back with DeAndre. I think he's been a great leader. He comes with a lot of experience and has been able to integrate into the group quickly. He's great in the 1v1 duels, great defending, has a good eye to play balls forward into the attacking players. So really pleased with the way DeAndre's come into the group. Juan Cruz is a player that I think is gaining his form. I think it was great to see him contribute to the score sheet last game where he made a great pass to Diogo for the goal. We constantly trying to get him in front of goal. We know how important that is for his confidence and for our team. But he's making great movement, great runs off the ball. We got to feed him the ball a little bit more, but he's always in positions. And I think he's just, I think he's one game away from scoring his first goal. So he's been great. And then Victor, like you said, I think he's the guy that kind of sets the tone for us defensively and offensively. I think he's a guy that moves backlines back. He can make plays on his own as he did in the second half where he just, hit that ball over the net. But he's scored a great goal the game before in transition, a ball from Diego Luna. So he does a little bit of everything, and he does what the team needs, and he plays really, really hard for the team. And, if we're going to be successful, this Victor is going to have to be a feature of our attack and our defense. But really pleased with the three guys that we were able to pick up, and hopefully we can keep this thing going to where they can keep integrating in the group and keep playing the way they're doing so we can make a good run in these playoffs.
Well, it will be dramatic. It will be fun. It will be cold. So pack that poncho and go get 3, will you?
Sounds great, Spence. Are you going, by the way?
No, I can't make it this weekend, but I'll be watching. I'll be tuned in for sure.
All right, bud. Sounds
Okay.
great.
Pablo Mastroeni, head coach of RSL. Fall soccer, it's a lot of fun. That is a tough place to play. That is the stadium where RSL won MLS Cup back in 2009. So hopefully some good karma there. Get 3 and you're in, bottom line. All right, before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. If you're a sports fan and you don't have Dish, I can promise you you're doing that wrong. And you can also save a lot of money on the internet. If you're one of those people that gets your internet bill every month and you're thinking, I pay too much for this, well, you are. And Ryan can help you if you dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, man?
We love doing that for customers. And, guys, it's so easy. The hardest part about switching really is just calling us. We've got great tricks for the internet where all your connected devices will just work on a new internet, so you don't have to worry about that. You just pay less money and have a faster internet, more reliable. There's so many different internet providers in Utah. And, guys, I've done the legwork for you. I've gone out, got the contracts, be able to sell their products for the same price they sell it, so there's no markup. And you can call us, and we can set you up and get you a lower bill. So if you're spending more than $70 a month, you're unhappy with your current internet that keeps going out or it's just slow, call us up. Now, Dish is killing it with this promotion, and this is one of the best deals I've ever seen Dish do. You call and get set up right now. You get Dish's top package free for the first 3 months. Plus, we'll throw in the NFL Red Zone and the multi-sports pack for 6 months. And we'll also throw in Showtime, Paramount Plus, and dinner at JCW's. Great opportunity to save money. If you got that overpriced cable bundle, guys, don't put up with it. They're the ones I really love when cable customers call because it is remarkable how much money we can save people. Easily $100 a month is so common. And, guys, that's just money you're throwing away, especially when you get the upgrade with Dish. Call us today. Get set up. Get internet and TV through us and get the best price guaranteed. And dinner at JCW's, 424-DISH. Call us now, 801-424-3474.
Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Sports Court time coming up on the other side. We'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the drive after that. We'll say goodnight at 6 in time for Thursday Night Football, a divisional battle in the Meadowlands between the Giants and the Eagles. And you can hear all the action right here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday, right about now, with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence. How you doing?
All good here. Appreciate the time. All right. This was one of those moments where I received the alert on my phone and went, wait a second, what is going on here? So initially, the report was Mark Sanchez had been stabbed, which was true. And then a couple of hours later, the news is, no, Mark Sanchez is being arrested. And then I think it was the next day, he is facing some very, very serious charges. This is a really wild, bizarre situation. Fill us in.
Yeah, when you see those two things, they don't seem consistent, right? He's been stabbed and he's also been arrested. Well, this grows out of an incident that's reported last late Friday or early Saturday morning, Friday, where Mark Sanchez is in an alley and he's wanting to park a car, and apparently there's a service truck parked where maybe it shouldn't have been, and a verbal altercation ensues between Mark Sanchez and a 69-year-old gentleman who's doing work there, who's doing a delivery or a pickup, and it proceeds, and this is all through video surveillance, where the man gets in his truck to get away from Mark Sanchez, and Mark Sanchez climbs in there, grabs him, and there's an altercation. It's a pretty serious altercation, and as a result of this, this man shoots pepper spray at Mark Sanchez and stabs him. My question is, God, this guy has pepper spray and a knife, and also this guy's beat up pretty badly. If you see the photos in the hospital, he's got a nice big slash on his face, and he's an older guy, and he's really beat up pretty badly. Well, there's witness evidence, and again, there's video surveillance in the alley, and it supports the story that Mark Sanchez was the aggressor here, and that he's the one that started all of this. And this man even said, felt like I was in fear for my life. Well, Mark Sanchez originally was arrested and for misdemeanor assault, intoxication, and a charge I didn't even know existed, unlawfully climbing into someone's car. Well, recently it was upgraded to a level 5 felony because of the seriousness of this guy's injuries. Well, right now what we know is Mark Sanchez apparently is still in the hospital. He's got several abdominal wounds from the stabbing. This week there was an arraignment. That's where someone who's been charged has to show up and enter a plea. Mark Sanchez did not show up, but his attorney showed up to enter this plea. And so what's going to happen here? The Indianapolis Police Department says they're still doing their investigation. There's reports that Mark Sanchez and this guy were both, as this verbal altercation is going on, they were both videotaping each other. So that will be evidence that will show kind of what happened. And reports are that this man is already going to pursue civil charges against Mark Sanchez, for assault and battery, which involves, physical injury. It has different standards than a criminal charge, preponderance of evidence. So Mark Sanchez is probably facing some potential legal issues with his job. He's got a great gig with Fox Sports, and that gig, probably in the ending, Mark Sanchez is now more infamous for something other than the butt fumble. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks for bringing that up, Preston. I appreciate it as a Jets fan. All right, Garrett, your turn to take a crack at, again, what is just a very, very wild, bizarre situation.
It is wild, and I think it's kind of crazy that this guy's already filed that civil lawsuit that Preston mentioned on Monday. Says it's left him with speech difficulties and permanent disfigurement. So it's something we'll follow.
All right, moving over to our next story. I would also like to sue LeBron for the second decision because it was a waste of all of our times. It was a thirst trap, as the kids would say. Cringy for a guy that just, for whatever reason, all of his brilliance on the court, off the court, so many just weird, clunky things. But there's a Laker fan suing LeBron over this announcement. Fill us in.
Yeah, there is, over this second decision. And originally I thought, is this a real case? Am I reading The Onion? But it is a real case, apparently. The whole second decision thing, he says, as soon as he saw the promo for it, he thought, this is it. LeBron's announcing his retirement. Of course, I'm going to go buy a couple of tickets to the Lakers game, spent $400+ on these tickets. And then the real ad drops, and it's a Hennessy ad. And now this guy is burned and wants his money back and has filed a lawsuit in small claims court. Kind of crazy. I mean, the fee to file the case is probably a third of what he's seeking. But it gets him, lands in the sports pages, I guess, and gets a little bit of notoriety out of it. But and probably, I would think, taking advantage of maybe some liberal California consumer protection laws. Because I just don't really see the cause of action here, what it is, because the ad doesn't do anything to really, induce him to take any action, except buy Hennessy, but not to buy tickets. So I don't know where it comes from, but kind of a funny story.
All right, Preston, you're up, bud.
Yeah, just drawing up on LeBron. He's kind of the king of PR. My guess is this guy's going to show up with courtside tickets, LeBron looking like the good guy.
All right, moving over to another just very tragic story. It's the Kyron Lacey story, and there's new video evidence that showed him, driving his car down the wrong side of the road. This was horrible. Two people lost their lives, an elderly gentleman, and then, unfortunately, Kyron Lacey took his life before he was set to be sentenced, I believe. So unpack this one for us.
Yeah, the reason we're talking about it, this happened last December, and what was allegedly reported was that Kyron Lacey, who incidentally, who's a former LSU receiver, pretty good receiver, might have had a future in the NFL, was driving recklessly going the wrong direction in the wrong lane. You can't do that. People were swerving out of the way, and someone swerved to not get hit on by Kyron Lacey, and as a result hit another individual head-on, which resulted in a fatality. Well, as you mentioned, not much talked about, about this thing, and Kyron Lacey is supposed to go before the grand jury where they'll decide whether they press charges. He was originally charged with vehicular homicide because of his acts. Well, recently, the reason we're talking about is his lawyer, Kyron Lacey has since passed, his lawyer came out with some statements that got a lot of traction. He basically said, hey, these reports were false. There was maybe motivation, racial motivation, kinds of things like that. He kind of got on a narrative and said, this was false. Kyron Lacey did not cause this. He reported 100 yards away. Well, some people jumped on this and even ran with that narrative. And, well, the Louisiana State Police said, whoa, wait a minute. We're being called into question here. We had done our investigation, and these charges were pressed based on evidence. So they released a video which clearly shows that Kyron Lacey is cruising along going the wrong direction, fast, recklessly, and in fact was the one that set into the chain of events that resulted in this fatality. There's even witnesses, if you've seen the witness there, claiming, what's that green Charger doing? This green Charger's flying along and, caused all of this. Someone says they caused all of this. So I think that's put to rest that there will be no adjudication of the charges, obviously, but that's the reason we're talking about it, because of these new things that came out.
All right, Garrett, you're up, bud.
Well, just something like this could put his attorney in a little bit of hot water, potentially, maybe even with California State Bar, to come out and make these kinds of statements to the media and look at the backlash that it's caused. Because obviously, he's telling a narrative there, but it's not the story that we can see on the video.
Story that we have been covering since it broke a few years back is Jon Gruden versus the NFL, and another favorable ruling in the direction of Gruden. Tell us about it.
Yeah, exactly right. One more favorable ruling here. This time the Nevada Supreme Court said again that they're going to uphold not only their own decision, but the lower court decision that this arbitration clause that we've talked about so much is unenforceable. So his case is going to go back to the lower court. He still has to prove it. And of course, I think, listeners know by now, but this just grows out of his firing and lawsuit against the NFL and Roger Goodell, following their investigation into the Commanders and Dan Snyder and the emails that got leaked. At least that's Jon Gruden's theory, right, is that Roger Goodell and the NFL leaked these emails that cast Jon Gruden in a pretty unfavorable light, to say the least, including some bad things that he said about Goodell. And so clearly Gruden has done everything he can to not let this case go to arbitration, where it would be heard and decided by John Gruden, and just felt like he can't get a fair shake that way. So Nevada Supreme Court is just saying one last time, nope, no arbitration. Let's hear the case down in court.
All right, Garrett, you're up here.
Yeah, Spence, I'll jump in. I think this is a really big victory. As we know, we've talked about this, the collective bargaining agreement and the employees, coaches, players, anyone associated with sports leagues, they enter into an agreement to have disputes arbitrated. And I can only think of this one in the Flores case where it's going to get to go to court. So I think this is a big deal. The Nevada Supreme Courts and the lower court said, hey, it flies in the face of reason that claims brought against Roger Goodell get to be heard by Roger Goodell. So now it goes back to the courts and, maybe potential discovery, that type of things. My bet is this will never see a jury unless Gruden just wants his day in court. But the NFL will put this to bed. They do not want this to be heard and have an adjudication against them.
That, of course, is Preston. My bad. It's been a long day. All right, final one for today. Utah transgender sports lawsuit has been dropped as the U.S. Supreme Court to hear what are similar cases going on across the country. Fill us in on this one.
Yeah, Spence, we talked about this, and it's a hotbed legal issue around the country, transgender sports. And, as a result of, transgenders participating in sports, there's all kinds of legislation around the country. Well, in 2022, the Utah legislature passed House Bill 11, which, paraphrase, says that born biological males cannot participate in competition in female sports in the high school level. Well, this bill passed, and as often is the case, there's people that want to challenge the bill, and so a couple of families of a couple of transgender athletes sued the Utah High School Athletic Association in the state of Utah for this bill. Their claim was that this is unconstitutional, violates equal protection and other constitutional rights. So a bunch of high-powered lawyers on both sides got going on this, and we talked about it a couple times, but I haven't heard a lot about it until recently, where it says that the plaintiffs, that's the families that brought this against the state, have decided to dismiss the case with prejudice. And that's important because with prejudice means that they can't down the road say, oh, yeah, we want to go refile it again and adjudicate it. And, certain legislators came out and said, well, this is a huge victory, and now this is the law of the land. This is the state law because it had been on pause during this appeal. And so essentially it is, but the speculation is the reason it was dismissed is because there are other states with like legislation that has been challenged that is going to make it to the United States Supreme Court before the Utah case would ever make it there. And so the feeling is, well, let these ones get there, let the United States Supreme Court, the Supremes, come out with their reasoning and their decisions on this, and that will basically set the law of the land across the country, even though, there will be nuances and different little things there and maybe further legislation, but that's the reason the speculation is it got dismissed.
All right, Garrett, now it is your turn.
Okay, well, just real quick, one of the cases is an Idaho case. They have a similar ban, and it's being heard by the Supreme Court. They're in session now, right now, and hasn't been scheduled for oral argument yet, but coming up, and so I'm sure we'll talk about it when it does.
All right, gentlemen, before I set you loose on this Thursday afternoon, for any of our listeners that have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yes, Spence, we love coming on air with you and talking about these legal issues in the world of sport, crazy ones, some serious ones, but it's really fun. Handy and Handy is a personal injury law firm. We help people that have been involved in accidents, represent them through the legal process, the insurance process, make sure they get taken care of and get compensated. Give us a call at 801-264-6677 or visit our website at handylawutah.com.
Great stuff, as always. Have an excellent weekend. Big one Saturday night, so we need to end with a Go Utes.
Big one. Yeah, Go Utes. Thanks, Ben.
All right, there they are. Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Give them a call with any legal questions. Great guys. Been coming on the show for a number of years. Always appreciate their time. All right, we will get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We're going to say goodnight at 6 o'clock, as we are often wont to do, to send you to Thursday Night Football, a divisional battle in the Meadowlands between the Giants and the Eagles. Game 4 of the NLDS has begun, and it's scoreless at the bottom of the third, 2 outs, Dodgers-Phillies. So there you go, as the Major League Baseball postseason continues to roll along. All right, Thursday Night Football tonight, a weekend of both pro and college football ahead. We're high speed ahead. The Mammoth start tonight, and then the Jazz get going October the 22nd. Dish is the only platform where you can get everything you want as a sports fan in Utah. I can tell you, because doing this job, I've got to watch all these games, and I tried a bunch of different things before I landed with Dish. You'll save money, and you'll also be able to save money on internet. If you think you're spending too much, you probably are. You need to call the Dish Pros at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, just a great time to switch, especially right now with this offer. And guys, listen, everybody raises their rates. DirecTV did a pretty significant rate increase last week. And if you haven't seen it, well, your credit card will. Here's the thing. You want to spend $40, $50, $60 a month less? Call us up. Take advantage of this. Now, on top of paying less, you get 3 months of Dish's top package. It's over 440 channels included for free. We'll get you set up with that and have you installed for free. We'll throw in a multi-sports pack, which includes the NFL Red Zone, and you also get Paramount Plus and Showtime free for 4 months. Listen, here's the thing. If you call right now, you get all that. We'll get you installed. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's, and we're talking about the best equipment. Biggest DVR out there. There's nobody has a DVR that's bigger than Dish. 16 tuners. Literally, you can record every single game at the same time on Saturday. And we'll get you also the Hopper Plus upgrade on there, which we'll do it as free, and that will give you all the access to all the streaming apps built into the system. So it's a great opportunity. Take advantage of it. You get the best price when you call us, plus we throw in dinner at JCW, so it's better than calling any other company out there. And we're the elite premier retailer from Northern Utah, so you get the best customer service. Call us, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-3474.
Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Give them a call and save some money. We'll catch a break. 5 o'clock hour of the program. All college football. We'll do a little NFL. We'll get you ready for Thursday Night Football between the Eagles and the Giants. The Jazz played a basketball game last night. The Mammoth play a hockey game tonight. And RSL's in action. BYU's at Arizona. And obviously Arizona State is here in town to take on the Utes. It is a jam-packed, massive weekend in the world of sports, both locally and nationally. And the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Thursday afternoon comes your way next right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Thursday afternoon style. Almost 5 o'clock straight up. We're actually on time with a clock, which never happens on this radio program. Happy Thursday to you. Beautiful, beautiful Thursday, man. Beautiful day outside, about 80 degrees and clear earlier. It's cooled down a little bit. Looking at about 78 degrees. Still very nice today. Beautiful Thursday afternoon. And as it is every single day, it's great to have you along for the ride. Man, so much going on in the world of sports, locally and nationally. A very, very busy weekend ahead featuring some big-time college football matchups with big-time implications at stake. Of course, Utah welcomes in Arizona State for a late kick at Rice-Eccles Stadium. There's an 83% chance of rain about 8 o'clock, which is roughly when this game kicks off. It kicks off specifically at 8:15. Our pregame show kicks off specifically at 4:15 with that guy, Porter Larson, alongside Trevor Riley. Trevor was in studio yesterday for an hour. Got a lot of feedback, as we often do when Trev joins us live in studio. He has a lot of very pointed opinions about the current state of college football and what Utah football needs to do to continue to keep up with the Joneses, namely the big spenders in the world of college football. Utah remains a 5.5-point favorite over Arizona State. That line has stayed very, very steady. And, you know, as we've discussed all week and we'll talk about throughout the course of the 5 o'clock hour, we're going to bring in Kyle Bonagura coming up in just a little bit. I don't think 2 losses is a death sentence, okay? Last year, I think 4 teams, 2 losses there at the end of the top of the conference. But it might be making Saturday night feel a little extra urgent, prescient, may I say. You cannot fake urgency in life and in sports. And when it comes to what a team like Texas is up against, in the Red River rivalry against their rival Oklahoma Sooners, it's do or die time. I know it feels hyperbolic to say that at this point of the season, but it's week 7. I mean, as I say every year, as we kind of enter the latter part of summer and we're kind of entering the early part of fall, I always say, look, don't blink, man. This stuff goes really, really fast. And suddenly we're sitting here and we're nearly halfway done is what it comes down to. I mean, you know, Utah football at this point 4-1 with a solid start, but 1 conference loss to a peer. And I do believe Texas Tech and Utah have shown enough to put them in that tier of teams that I think can win the thing, right? So you already have a loss to a team you're going to be jockeying with position at the end. And Arizona State is also in this, what I would qualify as a tier 1 Big 12 football program. Of course, winning the thing a year ago, winning the Big 12 a year ago when nobody saw that coming. Kenny Dillingham's a bright young coach, very well respected. And this is a team that I think most people believe got off to a little bit of an auspicious start. And I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago. I really don't. But it's a good team when it comes to a veteran quarterback that's been around the block a little bit in Sam Levitt. A running back who is not Cam Scattaboo, but not many running backs are, but Raleek Brown, a former 5-star high school recruit who spent some time at USC, is transferred in, and he has picked up the banner, as it were, and leads the Big 12 in rushing with 77 carries, over 500 yards, an average of nearly 7 per. And he's got speed. He has a 75-yard touchdown run this year. Jordan Tyson might be the best wide receiver, if not in the Big 12, but potentially the entire country. 39 catches, 483, 7 touchdown catches already. Now, Arizona State, defensively, is missing some personnel, okay? And what we've seen so far, and they are expecting to get a couple of wide receivers back. So we'll see if Sam can actually find a preferred second target, because it's been a little it's kind of a one-trick pony. You know, he has some tunnel vision for the Jordan Tyson kid, who's really good. I mean, you want your playmakers to make plays. And the crazy thing about Jordan Tyson is it appears that he's one of those players that every team knows is the player you got to watch out for, but he ultimately is able to make the play anyway. Now, the availability report was released a little bit earlier. This is a new thing in the Big 12. It's a new thing in college football. It's a new thing for Coach Witt. And Dallas Vakalaki was listed as probable, so that's good news. But the better piece of news is Jackson Benny is not on this report. Jackson Benny is a player that early on has manifested as a playmaker on defense, and Coach Witt himself often references his desire to see Jackson involved more on offense. So that's some good news that we didn't touch on earlier. The availability report has been released. So Rabbit Evans, of course, out for the year. Nate Ritchie, not season ending, according to Coach Witt. D'Adrian Zipper, Hunter Andrews, Paul Fitzgerald, Isaiah Garcia. Like, the players that we know are going to be out are on this report. But Dallas is now probable, and the best news is Jackson Benny is not on this list. Now, Arizona State's injury report has, let's see, 2 defensive backs out. The Xavier Alford kid. Albert Smith will not play. He's a defensive end. And Plas Johnson is the other defensive back who's out. And they are going to be down 4 offensive linemen. I think 2 of these offensive linemen are starters. And they're also without a linebacker who I believe is either first or second string. So this is a defense that's banged up. What they've been able to do so far, and we'll see if they can do it coming up on Saturday, is be pretty stout against the run, but not near as good when it comes to the throw game. So as we discussed earlier, and we'll talk to Kyle about this coming up in a bit, Devin's going to have to throw it. I think Devin's going to have to prove that he can beat a good team with his arm. And Devin has proven that when the competition isn't necessarily top shelf, he's very, very accurate. I think a lot of the questions we had about Devin and the potential of turning the ball over, because he did that a little bit last year with New Mexico with 12 touchdowns and 12 picks, they mostly have been answered. I mean, he has 3 interceptions, 11 touchdowns. His completion percentage is 73%, which is really good. QBR 148.7. Now, on the other side, Sam Levitt a year ago was second in the Big 12 in QB rating. He's 11th so far this year. Most of his numbers are down. In fact, across the board, his numbers are down. 63% completion rate, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks. 7 of his 8 touchdown passes have gone to Jordan Tyson. So, of course, Morgan's going to have to scheme something up to make sure that this kid is something that they take away. Because if you take away Jordan Tyson, the Shimon Mateer kid is a tight end who has 17 catches. Raleek Brown does have 19 catches, but only 107 yards, so it's an average about 5.5. So they're just quick checkdowns, nothing really dangerous there. But no other wide receiver, at least up to this point, has really manifested himself as a dangerous weapon that you're going to have to worry about. So to me, that's kind of dynamic number one. Can Devin beat this team through the air if they sell out to stop the run? Because we know Jason's offense, even though it is a spread attack, it is really predicated on being able to run the football. And Utah so far has proven they have 2 really good running backs that Jason likes to utilize a lot. And, of course, Devin can run himself. With some of the injuries piling up in the defensive backfield, will we continue to see Smith Snowden utilized on offense? I'm very curious to see what that dynamic looks like coming up on Saturday night, because you need Smith. You need Smith back there. And will this be a situation where he even spies the Jordan Tyson kid just to take him out of the game? So a big one, Utah, number 21, Arizona State, Big 12 action style, Saturday night, 8:15, rainy, cold, Rice-Eccles Stadium. Make sure you're prepared for that. BYU looks to stay clean. They've passed every test thrown at them so far. And if you're a longtime fan of the Pac-12, you know that trips to Tucson can just get weird. And playing an Arizona team that so far has been pretty good. I mean, they're still in the race. They're still in the mix. 1-1 in conference, 4-1 overall, coming off a win against Oklahoma State, who's probably the worst team in the Big 12. And BYU continues to be a very slight favorite in this game. They're a 1.5-point favorite. Arizona's conference loss was at Iowa State. They got stomped. Prior to that, they did beat K-State. That was not a conference game because it was scheduled when Arizona was in the Pac-12. So Arizona, BYU, Arizona State, Utah. Utah State Aggies are on the rock, taking on Hawaii. That is a late, I think it's a 10 o'clock Mountain Time kickoff coming up on Saturday night. The Jazz played last night. Ace Bailey looked awesome. The Mammoth start their season tonight against the Avalanche. RSL is up in Seattle to take on the Sounders at a rainy, cold Lumen Field in Seattle, Washington, and a grip of great college football action nationally. Pro football starts tonight. When it comes to the Thursday night football action you'll hear on the radio station, it's a divisional game between the Giants and the Eagles at MetLife in East Rutherford. The Phillies and the Dodgers have gone to the end of the 4th inning now at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. That game is scoreless. Both teams only have 1 hit. I want to quote Bob Uecker. One hit, one bleeping hit. You can't say that on the radio. Who cares? Nobody's listening. Major League. Great movie. So Phillies-Dodgers scoreless. The late game is the Brewers and the Cubbies. The Cubbies are going to try to stay alive as Milwaukee leads that series 2-1. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. And let me just bottom line this for you. I love that we have them as a client because it's actually something I can speak to as opposed to some other clients that we have that I've just never worked with, mostly because I haven't needed certain services. But Game Day Men's Health, if you're aging a little bit, and we all are, because breaking news, that's how life works. As time goes on, you get older. There you go. Boom. And if you've tried to get back into shape as you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, it's just a different game than it was when you were a teenager or in your 20s. When you're young, oftentimes what you eat, what you drink, what you put in your body, it doesn't have a real adverse effect. You can recover very quickly. So if you just give yourself 2-3 months in the gym exercising, if you're 22 years old, you will see results. Well, about 2 years ago, I decided I had some injuries. I had to have a knee surgery, meniscus surgery. Then I subluxed a rib. And I'm like, getting old sucks. I want to get back into shape. Like, how can I avoid being hurt? And so my physical therapist was like, all you guys in your 40s, you make the same mistake. You stop lifting weights. You got to get in and start lifting weights. So I started lifting like 3-4 times a week. I would do yoga. I cleaned up some habits. I was eating very clean. And then after 3 months, I'm like not seeing much progress at all. And it was really frustrating. So I had a couple of friends recommend supplementing testosterone, which I had never done before. Okay. So I went to Game Day Men's Health. I had their consultation. They're giving you this consultation for free, so you should definitely take advantage of that. What it entails is they draw some blood, then they do their analysis, then they go over your levels with you, and they talk about their products that can actually help you when it comes to the process of getting back into shape. If your libido is low, I can promise you supplementing testosterone helps. I'll just leave that one there. So I utilize their peptides. I utilize their testosterone therapy. And then within the next 3 months, I saw results that were twice what I saw in the prior 3 months, okay? They also have, the semaglutide, the tirzepatide, the in vogue weight loss drugs. If your aunt shows up to Thanksgiving, you're like, oh, she's totally on tirzepatide. Well, it's effective. If you need to lose weight, they can help you do that as well. But here's the deal. These products, historically speaking, have been for rich people, celebrities, athletes, because they're expensive. But that's not the deal now. The price points are something that anybody can afford because they're a client on the show. So as I said, step number one, you get a free consultation. It's free. It's on the house. Go in there. They're going to take your blood. They're going to go over your levels. But here's the kicker. They're giving you 50% off your first-year membership. They cut it in half for this deal only. And I can promise you, if you're looking to get back into shape, if your energy level's low, if your libido is low, give yourself 3 to 4 months. You're going to have to be consistent here. There's no such thing as a shortcut when it comes to getting back into shape. So get a good exercise plan, make sure your diet's good, and then utilize this offer that's super affordable with Game Day Men's Health. And I can promise you in 3 to 4 months, you will look in the mirror and you'll be like, wow, I did it. And it's a really good feeling when you're in shape, okay? Just takes a little bit of work. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Mention you heard me talking about it on this show. Free consultation, 50% off. They got a bunch of locations. I use the one in Cottonwood Heights, but they've got locations all across the Wasatch Front. GameDayMen'sHealth.com is where you go. All right, we'll catch a break. Do have some college football on your television tonight. Jake Retzlaff and the Tulane Green Wave, who are 4-1, by the way, and Jake has 7 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the most of any quarterback in FBS. They're taking on East Carolina. So if you're looking for college football, there are actually a few games tonight. We got Louisiana Tech, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, Sam Houston, Southern Miss, Georgia Southern. So, yeah, college football. But, of course, pro football. As Week 6 gets going tonight on our radio station, you will hear the Eagles take on the Giants in New Jersey. We have not discussed the corny second decision by your boy.
We have not.
We have not, because I wanted to go easy on you. I was trying to picture what the cringiest option was going to be, and he even blew away my expectations.
A little bit.
By the way, LeBron is out 3 to 4 weeks with sciatica. That is code for he is old.
I was going to say that means you're 40.
Have you ever had sciatica, like any sciatica issues?
So yes, but mine were caused by like injury, right? When you get stuff out of sorts back there. I had a horse situation as well as a dirt bike situation as a youngster. So if I don't stretch it out and I don't like keep up on my yoga sessions, it gets tight back there.
Yeah, it is.
The leg numbness, all that.
It's not great. I had it for a few years. Shameless plug here. They're not a client. Do yoga.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man. Like
yoga is not a client?
Well, anyone who does yoga or, yoga itself is not a client. No, from a macro standpoint, but any place that offers that service also does not advertise. If you would like to, ESPN700sports.com. I will talk about you because I'm a believer.
There we go.
If you have like lower back issues, yoga consistently for a few months will solve all of them.
If you have like, I would say like ghost lower back or knee pain, or like tight hamstring, it's almost always because you're too tight. You're so as your hips, your pelvic region, you're just too tight. That's like 80% of the time if you have phantom pain, unless there's something else going on. That's usually what it is. So
anyway, your boy's just super corny. LeBron is just really corny
and old. Like I was trying to say, I think the show that we had in between where he had teased something but hadn't actually released anything, it was nothing. It was always like, he's not going to do that and then announce his retirement. I think he's got a little more self-awareness than that, although he is, as you said, still very corny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that our guy has any self-awareness, and I say this all the time. When you're rich and famous and like a celebrity of any kind, the best thing you can have is someone in your circle that can grab you by the shirt collar and say, dude, don't.
Yeah.
He has nobody. There's nobody in his life that has ever been able to tell him no because he's everybody's cash cow.
Never has been.
But everybody needs somebody in their life to grab them by the shirt collar and just say, stop, okay, don't do it.
You're not wrong.
But LeBron doesn't have it. All right, weekend time. We reward you as listeners of this show with weekends starting on Thursday. I don't know how we do it. We just do. So before we say goodnight for Thursday Night Football, what comes our way, a Friday edition of the show.
Like you said, NFC East matchup on the station in just a few minutes. But tomorrow on a Friday edition of the show, you'll be out at Smith's up on 33rd, that big one up at the top of the hill. They got like a little sports fan store inside the Smiths. So you'll be out there with our friends, and it'll be live. We'll have a lot of Ute stuff on the show on a Friday. Sammy Mora, who's going to stop by today, will join us on a Friday of utezone.com. Robert Rojo Johnson joins the show on a Football Friday. Chris Kamrani joins the program. We may hear from our old friend Josh Newman, who's in town covering some football this weekend, and some golf with Paul Pugmire, as we do each and every Friday.
There you go. Golf is hilarious. The headline was John Rahm gets in spat at Spanish Open. So, of course, I clicked on it. And the marshal, John hit his drive right into the rough, and the marshal just said, hey, it's okay. And John said, it's not okay. And that was the spat they were referring to.
Have you ever seen Bryson DeChambeau? He like runs into the ropes on accident at one of these events and does like this very performative, dramatic flailing, falling to the ground. It's a lot. But there's this video. Go look it up. Bryson DeChambeau, dramatic dance. It's very funny.
I'll have to check it out, even though I cannot stand that dude. So join us for a Friday show. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Kyle Boniger, to Sam Bruckhouse, Andy Larson, and Pablo Mastroianni for any of the sound you may have missed from the show today. Website is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space in the afternoons for 4 hours every day, check out our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. It helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Thursday Night Football, Giants, Eagles comes your way next from the Meadowlands. Keep it right here on ESPN 700.